Salutations, my friends. And thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noisera of Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and I have titled this episode Domestic Aggression, Eco-Outrage, and Evil Evolving. That's right. A lot of crazy things going on in the world right now, and we do our best to bring it to you. Let's turn this up right quick. Yep. That's what I want to hear. Yeah. All right. Oh, God. Wow, we have a lot of different things to talk to you guys about in this this edition. Secession, eco-dictatorships, totalitarian states, cardinals being removed by Pope Francis from the Vatican for speaking the truth. That's where we're at now. We are in this new normal, and it's only going to get more strange. Wow. Wow. You know, I have some news for you guys after this intro gets done playing. If you didn't catch on, last week's episode of the video portion of the podcast was removed from YouTube. Yeah, because YouTube is lame. You can find that on Rumble. You can find last week's video portion of our podcast episode on Rumble, and on Brighteon, and on BitChute. And we'll probably end up evolving over there and migrating over time too, because YouTube is lame. These mainstream social media platforms are lame, and it is way overdue for us to have begun migrating and doing something different. Yeah. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning into this edition. I won't lie to you. I'm going to go ahead outright and tell you, next week, there will not be a podcast episode. We may just do an Instagram Live. We might not even do that. Just to be honest with you, there is a lot of personal stuff that went on this week, and it is not done. And next week, I have a lot of beautiful news that's going to take place. I'll tell you guys when I come back from it. But this week, it seems like it's all dread, and it's all negativity. And it's going to carry over into next week, and there's some stuff that I cannot be on the air for. So unfortunately, I will not be with you guys. I probably won't be doing a whole lot of posting. I'm going to be taking a break from my position. I'm going to be temporarily leaving my post to deal with personal issues. And again, I'll shoot you straight. I got some bad news before the show. And it pertains to nothing that we're doing here, but it does pertain to me, and it does affect me, and it does make me feel bad. It's such a surreal feeling, guys, with like all this death happening around me and all this life happening. It is such a surreal experience. You know, we say like one door closes and another door opens, but you know, that's saying it. Living it is like a completely different thing, and that's just where I'm at right now, trying to live with all this life and death around me, and I know you guys are as well. You know, I think everybody should just understand we are all we have. So what I want to do, instead of going on like a 5 to 10 minute rant, telling you how I almost got into a fight on the hill with a mask wearing person, or getting into it at the ultrasound office, instead of doing that, what I want to do is use this time to pray. And not only to ask God to bless us here on the show, the podcast, but also to bless us in our lives, because we really do live in tumultuous times. And I don't know about you guys, but I know I need God's help. And the more I do this, the more I try to be honest, and the more I try to stay on the straight and narrow, is the more that I know I need God's help. So let's go ahead and do that. If you guys could, bow your head, and I'm going to say a quick prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, all I can do, let me start over. Dear Heavenly Father, more of our conversations are becoming public than I would prefer, but this is the relationship that we have, and I think I'm put here to be a witness not only to your glory but to your grace. Lord God, all I can ask for you is for more peace, more clarity, and more strength to carry out your will here on this earth. I do count my lucky stars. I do count the blessings that you give me, God. I'm eternally grateful and eternally appreciative of what you've allowed me to do, of who you've allowed me to become, the people you've shown me, and the visions you've shown me. And I'm ever grateful. But I can't help but buckle, or at least momentarily stumble underneath some of this pressure. And so I seek out your faith. I seek out your face in faith, hoping that it will continue to guide me in the way that it has, because I need you now, God, Lord, more than ever. In Christ's name, amen. And with that being said, let's start the show. You know, earlier this week on the show, we earlier this week with Kalinda on Instagram Live, we had talked about different forms of activism. You know, trusting your intuition, using your creativity, fighting the algorithm, right? Organizing people, doing things like this. I'm telling you, this is going to be a different show, and I think it's because of not the lack of energy, but that I am a little bit distracted, so I won't be so absorbed in this. But earlier this week in the show, we had talked about different forms of activism, people getting activated in things like this. I have before me right here the secession theory PDF, which you guys can download on our Telegram channel. I'll put it in the description bar below. We're going to be getting into a article here shortly where it talks about how nearly a third of Americans want to break up the United States into like-minded countries. Now, what am I trying to tell you? Okay, this is Agenda 21. This is Agenda 2030. This is Agenda 2050. This is Codex Alimentarius, right? This is Rex 84. This is the Civil War. This is the secession. Okay? We are at a very, very, again, tumultuous time in history to where we're at each other's throats over the most simplest of things. This vitriolic nature that we have become so comfortable in is not normal. You know, I think about, because last week we talked about how Rush Limbaugh passing away signifies the dying of an age, the changing of the guard, a sign of the times, right? I think about that whole generation and how that layer of protection is gone now. Not only like ideologically speaking, but spiritually speaking as well. And I say that because how many of you have a grandmother or a great-grandmother or even a parent that prays for you? Not one that sits up over here and does this politicking crap, right? One that sits over there and actually prays for you. Some of my clients, I've told them my situation when I've been working with them. Some of them have said they've got prayer lists, Vaughn. They're EJ, they're gonna put my name, my wife's name, and some of the names we've chosen for our babies in there. And I think, good gosh, where is that today? You'll have people that'll take pictures of them praying for other people and virtue signal, but it's not real. And even if it wasn't real, it's the fact that they actually was real. He did write down our names and put them in a jar. But my whole point behind saying that is Rush Limbaugh passing away, that entire generation was something we're not. And I might hop up over here and get frustrated saying, oh, well, that generation failed us. We exist because they failed us. But we exist because they did something. You know, and again, I think about that whole generation that's no longer with us and how angry we are, how hateful, how hate-filled we are, right? How violent we are, how aggressive we are, how much we hate, right? People couldn't wait to talk smack about Rush Limbaugh. People couldn't, like, we can't wait to find moments to be wicked, vile, and hateful. And it really does show where you're at. And so before I get into this article where we talk about a fair amount of Americans wanting to break up the country, secession theory, I think that should really be known. While this is interesting to look at on a political perspective, what did we talk about earlier this week on the show with Kalinda? Trans-spiritualism, right? Look at how they're trying to siphon off all the worst low vibrational energy from people, and look at what they're doing. They're turning us into monsters. They're turning us into thugs. They're turning us into criminals, extremists. They're turning us into something we're not, man. And I think that's something that people should be mindful of. You see? So let's go ahead and start getting into the information with you guys. Last week, last week, we put this article up. Let's see if we can get it up, load it up for the team. It says that nearly 1/3 of Americans, where is it? Shucks. You can see the preparation. Of course. Of course, it's because I'm trying to look for it now. If I wasn't looking for it, it would pop up right there. I've got the articles here. Come on now. I'm so scatterbrained, it's not even funny. Right there, bam. Nearly 1/3 of Americans want to break up the United States into like-minded countries. This has been revealed by a poll. This is by Paul Saka of The Blaze. They put this up February 19th. And again, think about this. The same way that I'm saying transhumanism isn't merely physical is the same way that the Civil War isn't political. We say it here all the time, that there is no there is no political solution to a spiritual problem. Let's get into this. It says the divide between Americans seems to be widening in recent years, and the political schism doesn't appear to be narrowing anytime soon. The major partisan divide in the country has gotten to the point that many Americans have contemplated a national divorce because they believe that there's far too many ideological differences to bridge the line of demarcation. An eye-opening poll found that a shocking percentage of Americans are in favor of the dissolution of the United States. According to a new Bright Line Watch survey, nearly 1/3 of Americans want to break up the United States and create smaller, more like-minded countries. Now, think about this. As I sit here with a literal map showing you the difference in nations. I'm going to see if I can try to pull this up on Telegram for you guys so we can kind of look at this together. And I think, again, this is something that people should download. You can look at it on our Telegram channel because it's real. It is legit real. Like, people are fired up. People are frustrated. People don't want to deal with any of this nonsense anymore. And so they're saying, you know what? I want Trump country, or you know what? I want Biden land, or stuff like that. And you have to ask yourself, when we get to that point, right? Where do we go from here? We say it all the time. They're trying to divide us. They're trying to divide us. And what do you think they're doing? Unfortunately, I can't get it up for you guys, but I'll download it, or I'll put the link for it. We put it up back in January, on January 27th. I'll put the link on it in the description bar below. It's the secessiontheory.pdf. You can find it there. But let me get back into this article to continue on. It says between January 28th and February 8th, the 2,700 poll participants were asked various questions. Some people say the division within our nation has grown so deep that we would be better off dividing the more like-minded regions that would govern themselves separately. Do you support or oppose the idea of the United States dividing into more than one nation? The survey found that 29%, 10% strongly, and 19% somewhat of Americans were in favor of the dissolution of the United States into like-minded regions. There it is again, that regionalism that we've talked about how nationalism and globalism cannot compete because these are two diametrically opposed ideologies, creating that right there, like-minded regions. And you guys will see this if you download the PDF, the secession theory PDF. You'll see that with that like-minded regions, you have places like Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico forming what they call the Free West. And then you have states like Washington, Oregon, and California forming the new West Coast, the more luxurious aspect of America. And then that greater chunk of Central America from Texas all the way up to Alaska, British Columbia, Canada, really, all the way down. That's the Mississippi River. It's a very, very fascinating theory to look at. But if this is just what's being circulated around on the internet, what people are talking about, what do you think is happening at the higher levels, right? FEMA districts. Let's go ahead and call it what it is. Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. FEMA districts. That's why you're already seeing it with the COVID-19 nonsense. Locking states down, giving them green zones and yellow zones and red zones. Right? Where else did you see the predictive programming for this? The Hunger Games, because that is the agenda. You see, united, we stand. Divided, we fall. And we are currently in the twilight of this republic. We are falling. This is not a good thing. I don't think so. Continuing on, it says, there were noticeable differences based on political party lines and geography. Surprisingly, 37% of independents were most inclined for the country to go its separate ways. There were 35% of Republicans who wanted to secede, followed by 21% of Democrats who wanted their own country of like-minded individuals. Brightline Watch proposed to divide the United States into 5 regional unions based on geography and political affiliation. You've got the Pacifics, the Mountain Idaho, the South, and Heartland, as there's another one too right here, and the Northeast. Now, what's interesting is they have a very different grouping, a geopolitical grouping of the nations, of the states. It's very, very interesting. This is all very interesting because this is dangerous. But at the same time, it's very interesting. So they've got the Pacific, which contains California, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, and Alaska. You've got the mountainous areas, which is where I would be. You've got Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. You've got South Texas. And that's very interesting that they just have this a different grouping based off of geopolitical views, right? What are these people thinking of? What do they find important? You've got the South Texas, you've got the South, which is Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, South Kakalaki, North Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. You've got Heartland, the heart of America, which is Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, and Nebraska. And you also have the Northeast, which is Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, and the District of Columbia. Now, what's interesting is the on the secession theory, you'll see that is the New England, right? That's the portion of the New England. And let me read what it says right here on the secession theory, and then I'll get back into this article, and then we'll try to continue on. It says the New England, that right there, he says this is where we have, and here is where we arrive at our actual problem. There is a lot of money in the eastern half of Canada and the New England states, and also a lot of men to draft. Now, obviously, we still have to follow the Constitution, and they've abandoned it. So really, all that land belongs to us. But I imagine we'll be merciful and try to allow them to leave, a peaceful parting of ways. A warning, though, they might not let that happen. If the shooting starts, it will be because of New England's taste for tyranny. Whether or not they start a war, expect the eastern half of Canada to fuse together with the New England states. This is what they call the Northeast. It says the result would be a nation very similar to what the UK is like right now, a nation that remembers the glory days and delusionally holds on to the dream that they are the world power. If they are foolish enough to start a war, we will take D.C., Maryland, and Delaware at a minimum. Very, very, all of this is crazy to me. This is domestic aggression, right? We'll be getting into it shortly here. States that are trying to fight back against HR 127 because they understand the creeping tyranny that's taking place, and they're trying to figure out, hey, how do we warn people without telling them? You know, you got to let's pull back from this, because I really would advise you guys to check it out yourself. It's a very interesting thought to go down. The Civil War is happening. You've got nearly a third of people within the military that are refusing the vaccines. And I'm telling you, you know, this is a very real thing. I am privy to some very, very interesting conversations. And I can tell you that these conversations are being had in your local area, and you need to get prepared. You need to get prepared, because it's happening a lot faster than we would think. It's creeping into our lives. And the sad part is, as many people are asleep, they will go along with the tyranny because they know nothing else. You know, I was thinking about this earlier today when I was thinking about taxes and how much they resemble herpes and theft. You know, the Tea Party stood for taxed enough already. Look at how much of our income goes towards like programs that don't even benefit us here. It will get to a point, it will get to a point to where people are legitimately tired of paying these taxes, having their money, having taxation without representation. Like I had talked about this in the Instagram Live earlier this week, and with the exclusive members just last week. I think one of the reasons why Texas got slammed with that weather modification and with that snowstorm is because they themselves were trying to secede. We went over this. Kyle Biederman had introduced the Texit bill into the House, the Senate, whichever, and that was my thought process. And then you had Chucky Schumer coming out saying, I hope those dirty Texans learn their lessons. But this is what I'm saying. There's a larger war going on. You have the deep state revealing themselves. You have a civil war within the government because you have actual patriots that don't want to go along with this. And then you have corrupt globalists that have sold us out. You have nationalists fighting globalists and having to settle on this regionalism. We are for sure seeing, again, a monumental shift in the nation. But here, let's get back into more articles. Continuing on the show right here. Missouri. Missouri. It says a county passes ordinance to arrest the Fedcoats who are violating citizens' gun rights. This is an article by Tim Brown of Sons of Liberty Media. They put this up February 22nd. And think about this. This is, again, more of that type of talk, right, to where we have rights. I'll be playing a clip for you here, I think in either the second segment or the third segment, where Chris Sky, a man in Canada, fights back against the COVID tyranny, saying, hey, you have rights. These people have to respect them. Just because you forgot them doesn't mean that they could ignore them. And so what's happening is people are having to be reminded of their rights, reminded of the Constitution, reminded of the Bill of Rights, versus these edicts, okay? We talked about this again on the show earlier in this week with Kalinda and why you have to be armed with the facts, but this is a good thing. Who knows? Let's get into this. It says earlier this month, a Missouri county put some teeth in their nullification of federal gun laws and authorized its sheriffs to arrest any federal agent seeking to enforce policies that violate the rights of the people to keep and bear arms under the Second Amendment. According to the ordinance passed by the Newton County Commission, the act of violating the Second Amendment is criminalized. The Second Amendment Preservation Act of Newton County, Missouri states that this, quote, all federal acts, laws, orders, and rules and regulations passed by the federal government, and specifically any presidential administration, whether past, present, or future, which infringe on the people's rights to keep and bear arms, as guaranteed by the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution and Article 1, Section 23 of the Missouri Constitution, shall be invalid in the county. The section of the Missouri County Constitution reads, as follows, quote, that the right of every citizen to keep and bear arms, ammunition, and accessories typical to the normal function of such arms in defense of his home, person, family, and property, or when lawfully summoned in aid of the civil power, shall not be questioned. The rights guaranteed by this section shall be unalienable. Any restriction on these rights shall be subject to strict scrutiny, and the state of Missouri shall be obligated to uphold these rights and shall under no circumstances decline to protect against their infringement. Now think about that. They're literally telling you, you have a right to defend yourself, and if In the event you have to be summoned to protect the civil liberties of others, do so. You have rights. Protect yourself and others. But these people trying to violate your rights to protect yourself is the problem. That's why you've got to be very careful about these protests, very careful about what you post on the internet, very careful about how you wield that amendment, because they're trying to set people up. Let me get into this and I'll move on to our next article. This is the Missouri Second Amendment Preservation Act continues, saying this, quote, such acts, laws, and orders, rules, and regulations include, but are not limited to, any tax, levy, fee, or stamp imposed on firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition, not common to all other goods. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry, I think we're back. More of that. Wow, I'm gonna have to read this end part again. Sorry, guys. You guys don't know this, but I had to pause it and have like a quick little 5-minute conversation. You know how I told you this is just lifetime stuff. I think it adds another element to this stuff. You know how I told you guys I was gonna have to wait like 2 weeks to figure out the gender of my baby? Well, let's just say I got the phone call. I figured out the gender of my baby. You're going to have to wait 2 weeks to figure out the gender of my baby. I just found out, and I can't tell you guys how excited I am. But that's what I'm saying, man. That's more that revolving door of life, man. One door closes and another one opens. Wow. So yeah, no, sorry. Had to momentarily pause the recording to answer a life-changing phone call, which you guys will hear more about the week after next. All right, let me go ahead and get back into this, and then we can start flying through stuff. I was waiting for that phone call. Oh man, so good. Yeah. So it says that the Missouri Second Amendment Preservation Act continues, saying that such acts, laws, orders, rules, and regulations include, but are not limited to, any tax, levy, fee, or stamp imposed on firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition, not common to all other goods and services. Any registration of tracking of firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition, any act ordering the confiscation of firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition, act ordering, and finally the act of whether past, present, or future passed by the United States Congress and signed into the law by the federal government, and specifically any presidential administration which infringes on the people's rights to keep and bear arms in Newton County, Missouri, shall be considered null and void by the county and not recognized by this county. So what did we talk about before this, before the phone call, before getting into this article? This is the secession theory, right? What did we get into earlier this week with you guys? Political refugees. The great socioeconomic reformation, the great socio-political reformation. People migrating from different parts of the nation to places that share their same views, right? This is, again, a part of Agenda 2030. One of our exclusive members, we got into this like last Friday, where we were trying to break down how this would go down. Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, how they would get massive swaths of people to uproot their life and then change their political identity. This is it. COVID was a big part of that. People not being able to, have jobs, have a life, step outside of their house without being forced to wear a mask, stuff like that. And then you have the other elements of this Second Amendment stuff, the type of things they're teaching children, right? Taxes. There's so many different things that come into it. And so people just want to be free. That's what it comes back down to. But because you have a globalist aspect infiltrating our nation, parasiting, using us as like a host, and then being parasites, extracting all of our resources, you're going to have some people that are down for that, who look at the globalist model and think that's the way of the future, versus others who say, hey, no, we need to protect our own. This is, again, that polarization that's taking place. But here, let's get it back into this article so we can start getting a good flow back into the show. This comes from Nima Harris over there, News Punch. They put this up February 24th. Indiana Republicans pass bill restoring citizens' guns rights. Quote, no more licenses. That's right. You should not be taking courses to say, hey, I have a firearm. You should not be having certifications for concealed carry. You shouldn't be doing none of that crap. Okay? Because that's incrementalism. That's unconstitutional. And we have actual rights. But because we now live in a tyrannical time, this is considered a bad thing. One of the main proponents of HR 127 is that they want to give you a psychological evaluation in order for you to own a gun. And then they want you to go through federal firearm license training in order to operate a firearm. Think about that. You have to be authorized by the feds in order to protect yourself. That's redonkulous. Let's get into this. It says Indiana Republicans have passed a bill restoring citizens' Second Amendment rights after voting to abolish the requirement for gun owners to carry an unconstitutional license in the state. On Monday, state lawmakers passed House Bill 1369, which will now head to the Senate. The bill repeals a law that forced people to obtain a license to carry a handgun. The new law will allow any person who is lawfully able to carry and possess a firearm to do so without needing an additional government-issued permit or license. The bill specified that certain criminals still could be prohibited from carrying guns. NewYorkPost.com reports that supporters of the bill argue that the permit process punishes law-abiding citizens and residents shouldn't have to pay for a right guaranteed by the Second Amendment. Quote, anything that can make things easier for somebody who is a law-abiding citizen is always something that I am going to try and support, said Indianapolis gun owner Eric Hausman, according to Fox 59 of Indianapolis. Police, however, argued that eliminating screening processes would put more guns on the streets, making communities less safe. Very interesting. I think that everybody having access to guns makes everybody respectful because they will get shot in the mouth if they're disrespectful. That's how I see it. When we would talk too about the breakdown of law and order, this is another thing we talked about, the rule of man, the violation of the social contract, the breakdown of law and order and things like this. We had gone over things like martial law, Sharia law, the Noahide laws, going by the Constitution, going by the Ten Commandments, things like this and more. And in places in the UK, they have Muslim no-go zones because the Muslims take care of everything there. That's that Sharia law where everything is just taken care of. You've even got the mafia where they have like their own, La Cosa Nostra, where they have their own like code. And where they don't talk to cops, they handle it internally. But see, that's what happens is because we're not clicked up, we don't practice self-governance, we think that we need to keep abdicating our power to a state or to the state to come protect us. Well, here, I'm black. I got a 50-50 chance of them shooting me or actually solving the problem. And so, no, I don't really think people should always give their power over to the state or always expect somebody else to take care of them. They should be able to make their own community safe, weed out the bad elements. And the truth is, too, some of those bad elements end up joining the law enforcement gang because it's easier for them to do what they're doing with a badge on them. But I digress. Let me get back into this article. It says, quote, I think we are very strong supporters of the Second Amendment, said Lafayette Police Chief Patrick Flanley, who with the Indiana Association of Chiefs of Police. Quote, by repealing processes like this that are good screening mechanisms, we're going to put more guns out on the street, and there are going to be people that should not be carrying guns that will be carrying them. Yeah, you're going to lose that fight every single time. But this is domestic aggression. People are buying guns, people are buying ammunition, people are buying food, people are buying toilet paper because they see the writing on the wall. Because they see the writing on the wall. Check this out. So while you have Indiana, you have Missouri stepping up, catching on. Check this out. Over here in Oregon, if you have a gun license, you go to prison. Over 300,000 Oregonians would become felons. This is an article by Patriot Rising. They put this up on February 23rd. It says this week, the Oregon Senate Judiciary Committee took 4 hours of testimony on SB 554. A bill designed to turn 300,000 law-abiding Oregonians into felons that Jenny Burdick can leave the Senate happy. This next part comes from the bill. It says, quote, it authorizes city, county, and metropolitan service district, port operating, commercial airport, school district, college, or any university to adopt the ordinance or policy limiting or precluding affirmative defense for possession of firearms in public buildings by concealed handgun licensees. We need not reiterate just how sick this concept is. As expected, Multnomah County Sheriff Mike Reese did the bidding of his overlord, the anti-gun billionaire Mike Bloomberg, and testified in favor of this bizarre and hate-filled legislation. But as we noted by one opponent of the bill, he inadvertently and ignorantly made a case against the bill when he pointed out the many places where police response times are dangerously long. Ain't that what I was just talking about? It says the anti-rights crowd trotted out the usual collection of nonsensical positions, citing, quote, statistical and studies they never produced. It's interesting to note that the same people who were determined to make parents felons for having the means to protect their kids at schools are determined to outlaw school resource officers. And it goes on from there, but you get the point. They're trying to retroactively turn you into a criminal for protecting yourself. They want to retroactively turn you into a criminal because you have the means to protect yourself and you do not want to wait for the police, nor do you want to roll those dice. Think about this. In other schools too, they're replacing some of these school resource officers with, what do they call them? Like climate officers, like climate stewards or something crazy like that. But we'll save that for the next segment. This is still the domestic aggression, seeing that things are intensifying, right? People are getting armed. They're getting angry. They're getting connected. What did CIA Director John Brennan say? That libertarians, religious extremists, nativists, fascists, and authoritarians create like an unholy alliance that he has to squash. This is that unholy alliance. People rediscovering their rights. I was watching the Boondocks the other day, and it was the episode of Catcher Freeman where they were making fun of not making fun of, but they were doing like a whole slave thing where they had like the Uncle Tom, they had the field workers and the house workers, and the difference that's there. And it's just crazy because there are people that want slavery and then there are people that want freedom. And sometimes it is so night and day. It is disturbing. But here, check this out. Talking more about the domestic aggression and some of the other political extremism that's taking place right here. Black police officer fired after being accused of sharing info with BLM protest organizer. An article that comes by Alex Nitzberg of Just the News, Not the Noise. They put this up February 22nd. And, what do you think I'm going to read? So while those darn dirty Christians and conservatives, those darn dirty Republicans and Trump supporters are trying to get armed and protected, you have things like this. You've got police officers leaking information to BLM protesters. And we know they were doing this, but the fact that there's an article signifying this shows you that they might have hit squads out there. You see how they chastise people, the Trump supporters and those Christians and conservatives having prayer sessions and protests and stuff like that, but they don't say a darn word about the billions of dollars of damage that's been done. And so these are the hit squads, okay? You imagine, because I've got this going on out here myself, where there are like hits being put out on people like me for doing exactly what I'm doing right here. Can you imagine me coming up here on the show one day and having to tell you guys that I ended like a gentleman's life because he had tested me and he got orders from somebody else who was feeding them information? So we can talk about George Soros funding Antifa, BLM by any means necessary and stuff like this, but what happens when it's like this close and in your face? Let's get into this, and then I have another video clip I want to play for you guys right after. It says the Lexington Fayette Urban County Council has fired police officer Jervis Middleton, a black police officer who was accused of sharing information with a Black Lives Matter protest leader. Lexington Police Chief Lawrence Weathers, who was also black, and an internal police disciplinary board recommended that Middleton get sacked for breaching department policies and sharing information with BLM protest leader Sarah Williams, according to the Lexington Herald-Leader. Lawyers for Middleton said during a Thursday hearing that the black officer had endured racial discrimination from other officers and was frustrated that action had not been taken to address his concerns about racism within the department, according to the outlet. Middleton was also reportedly frustrated regarding police killings of black individuals in the U.S. Quote, Keith Horn, a lawyer for the city, said during an opening arguments that Middleton told Williams what to say to some officers during protests in May and June and sent her some staffing information, including that police were looking for officers to work overtime to work the protests, the outlet reported. While Middleton initially denied supplying information, he later acknowledged having done so after seeing texts and other messages from Williams' phone that were procured by authorities via a search warrant, Horn reportedly said. So think about that. They're trying to retroactively criminalize people for owning firearms. But on the flip side, you've got the protesters working with law enforcement, You've also got the BLM linking up with the mainstream media. You see how that works? You see how you're the problem for wanting to protect yourself? You will either bend a knee or raise a fist to the New World Order. But check this out. Over here in Alabama, they're having a revival, a worship revival.
Jesus, today, light my heart on fire. King Jesus, I give you my life. I give you my fears. I give you my worry. And I give you my sin. I step into freedom. I step into joy. I repent for my sin. I repent for my hard-heartedness. I repent for not trusting you. I'm done living in compromise. I want to be fully yours. Jesus, here's my life. I'm yours.
That was Sean Fuchs. Sean Fuchs. He held this massive revival session in Alabama on February 21st. Thousands of people attended, and you didn't hear a single word of it. And what did we say at the start of the show? That there is no political solution to a spiritual problem. And that's where we are. We're not well right now. This is why they told you, do not celebrate Christmas. You had better not come together for Thanksgiving. How dare you celebrate New Year's? Did you go to a Super Bowl party? And while these are all things that we don't really celebrate over here on the show, what it is giving glory. What it is taking time and energy away from the power of the state, from politics, and it's making it a more spiritually nourishing event, a more metaphysical experience. And that's what people need. We need to be coming together. We need to be hugging. We need to be kissing. We need to be sharing. We need to be going through this together. We need to be repenting. Because we need to change. Otherwise, we're going to have more of the same. Let me read a little bit of this, and then I'll get into another article with you guys. This comes from Ricky Saparo. They put this up February 22nd on End Times Headlines. It says, worship leader Sean Fuchs is spreading revival in the, quote, heart of the Dixie this weekend, where hungry souls join together to seek God's true and healing powers. Fuchs brought his, quote, let us worship event to Birmingham, Alabama on Saturday, where God's Spirit poured out over thousands of worshipers at Veterans Park. Quote, thousands gathered for over 10 states to fill Veterans Park with a new sound. There is an awakening happening in America, and God showed up. I will leave all that in the description bar below if you guys would like to check it out. But it's true. There's a great separation taking place, a separation of the wheat from the tares, right? This is that civil war, the spiritual awakening, the great awakening. But at the same time as this great awakening is taking place, you also have a massive deception being played on the people. It talks about this too in the Bible. The great falling away. This is also a part of the trans-spiritualism. You see, because when you're angry, you cannot be appreciative. When you're hateful, you can't be grateful. You have to understand these things. They are trying to keep you in a frequency, locked and hateful, angry, to where you're unable to see the forest through the trees. And I mean this right here. Repressive tolerance. White supremacy is a transnational threat, the UN chief warns. That's right. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned on Monday that white supremacy and neo-Nazi movements are becoming a, quote, transnational threat and have exploited the coronavirus pandemic to boost their support. This is an article that comes from Signs of the Time. They put this up February 22nd. Now think about this. Wasn't it Sean King, one of them high yellow homies, that said, yeah, we need to tear down Jesus because he's a symbol of white supremacy? How long until Christianity becomes a symbol of white supremacy? In China, they already call it a Xixiao, an evil cult. How far is an evil cult from a symbol of white supremacy? How long until worship and prayer become chastised? It says, addressing the UN Human Rights Council, Gutierrez said the danger of hate-driven groups was growing daily. Quote, white supremacy and neo movements are more than domestic terrorist threats. They are becoming a transnational threat, he told the Geneva Forum. Without naming states, Gutierrez added that, quote, today, these extremist movements represent the number one internal security threat in several countries. Before I continue on, think about that. It's a transnational threat because we are seeing a creation of the New World Order. We are seeing the scientific dictatorship. We are seeing people during this Great Awakening, during this revival, people wanting freedom. But of course, they're going to call you a threat because they want you to be a slave. Again, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. This is the 1984 logic that they were able to deploy with COVID. They're saying you wanting to have congregation, wanting to have fellowship, wanting to go to a restaurant. That's not essential. You're a threat. Think about the language that they use to demonize, dehumanize, and ostracize people, man. Let me get back into this. It says, in the United States, racial tensions simmered during the turbulent 4-year presidency of Donald Trump. His successor, Joe Biden, has said that the January 6th siege of the U.S. Capitol by Trump supporters was carried out by, quote, thugs, insurrectionists, political extremists, and white supremacists. Quote, far too often, these hate groups are cheered on by people in positions of responsibility in ways that were considered unimaginable not long ago, Gutierrez said. Quote, we need a global coordinated action to defeat this grave and growing danger. So just like that, they're going to create an anti-ideology party or an anti-ideology action group to suppress white supremacy to, as I said before earlier in the week, eradicate an ideology. That's what they want you to do, okay? They want you to abandon your nationality, abdicate your identity, and abolish an ideology. Get rid of those gosh darn dirty white supremacists. Repressive tolerance. And this isn't the first time he's asked for a global governance to deal with this. That should really put it into your face, the type of mindset we're dealing with. And I'm not saying that white supremacy doesn't exist. I say that it is real, but I'm saying they are reviving racism with the type of rhetoric they're using. They are trying to stoke the flames. And as I said earlier this week on the show, first it's those gosh darn dirty white supremacists, those Christians, conservatives, and constitutionalists. And then it's Black Lives Matter because they've done their job. Then it's Antifa. And then it's whoever comes after that. Last year when I told you guys that my children are going to have to deal with the children of Antifa and Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff, this is the type of stuff we're talking about. They are setting things up for a multi-generational assault to, again, eradicate an ideology. I mean, look at this. Look at this right here. Boom. UK police forced to respond after ad claimed being, quote, being offensive is an offense. The force clarifies that, quote, being offensive is not in itself an offense. And so, audio listeners, you guys can't see this. I'll describe it to you. They have 4 police officers of the peace, standing in front of a sign. In such a showboating nature, being offensive is an offense. They're saying, don't be mean. Obey Big Brother. And then they've got like the rainbow flag of the LGBT mafia right behind it. So again, those gosh darn dirty white supremacists, those constitutionalists, those Christians, those conservatives, they are so offensive, right? Gosh, they're so mean. Somebody should just lock them up, take their kids, re-educate them, and teach them how to act right. It's like, you don't think what you said right there was a little bit extreme? That's offensive. That you don't think that we could raise our kids, that you can do better? Why is it that these people always want your kids, always want access to the future? It's very, very shady. This is an article that comes from Paul Joseph Watson over there at Summit.News. They put this up February 22nd. It says Myerside police were forced to respond after officers took part in an electronic ad campaign outside a supermarket which claimed, quote, being offensive as an offense, with authorities later clarifying that it is in fact not an offense. Over the weekend, the mobile electronic billboard was parked outside of an Asda supermarket for a PR campaign. Quote, being offensive is an offense, states the ad, which features a police badge superimposed over an LGBTQP rainbow flag. Quote, Myerside police stand with and support the LGBTQP plus community. We will not tolerate any hate crime on any level. Come and speak to Team Beb. Come and speak to Team Bev, states the next ad. The billboard received a huge backlash, with many people pointing out that it is in fact not a criminal offense to be offensive. Wow. Mayor-signed police were forced to later clarify in a statement that, quote, being offensive is not in itself an offense. Maybe they should have just realized that before putting a van in big letters on the side of the van. Call me crazy, I don't know. It says the force said that the ad was intended to, quote, encourage people to report hate crime, and, quote, although well-intentioned, was incorrect, and we apologize for any confusion this may have caused. So think about this. They're coming up with hate crimes. They're saying there's all kinds of trannies and lesbians and gays that are being killed. Report those people. Don't offend us. Tolerate us. If you don't, we'll come for you. This is that clown world. Like earlier in the week, whenever I was talking about this to a degree, the trans spiritualism. This is more of that, where you got to be tolerant. Like they're getting rid of Christianity. You see that, and then they're replacing it with tolerance. They're replacing it with this, where you have to be a social justice warrior, you have to virtue signal, you have to pledge your allegiance to the New World Order, you have to use all the right words, say all these right things. You have to jump and ask how high by these people. You see? This is the domestic aggression. This is them telling you what you can and cannot say, what you can and cannot believe in.
On immigration really quick.
Yeah, we'll get into that here shortly. What you can and cannot believe in, and what you're forced to do. This is the obey Big Brother mindset. No, you can't defend yourself. You have to call us to see whether or not you're worth saving. No, don't stand up for yourself. Remember, you have to abdicate your identity, join the collective, be tolerant. Think about these things, those gosh darn dirty constitutionalists and white supremacists. Let me get back into this double standard mindset that comes from this 1984 world we now find ourselves in. Earlier this week, Jen Psaki basically clarified that they put kids in cages. Yeah, Democrats have been blasted as hypocritical for reinstating the notorious kids in cages detention policies at the border they previously used to attack President Trump. Yeah. So again, more of that double standards, rules for me, for not for thee. This is that left-hand path nonsense. This is the rules for radicals. Again, you better not defend yourself. Call the state. We'll tell you whether or not you're defendable, whether or not we want to take care of you. No, you don't put those kids in cages. They're, what are they called? Overflow migrant detention facilities? I don't know. We're only going to play a little bit of this double speak and then close out with like a bigger bang, some stuff that's happening here locally. But this is it. This is more of that 1984 obey Big Brother, right? I'm going to do this, do as I say, not as I do. I'm not going to be a shining example. I'm going to be a dictator. I'm going to trip you up. I'm going to manipulate your thought process. I'm going to play at your heartstrings, and I'm going to tell you what to think. Here's Jen Psaki.
Merrick Garland was asked yesterday if illegal entry at the border should remain a crime, and he said, I hadn't thought about that question. Does President Biden believe that illegal entry at the border should remain a crime moving forward?
Well, I think he was being asked as the Attorney General, the future Attorney General. I think he's looking to head to be confirmed of the United States. And if he wants to make considerations independently, he can certainly do that. But the president's spoken to this, and we believe in abiding by our laws. As you know, there, of course, is a process underway at the Department of Homeland Security to take a fresh look at prioritization and who is detained and who is sent back home. So that is something happening from the Department of Homeland Security. But again, if he's going to lead an independent Justice Department, and it's his prerogative to take a look at any policies under their purview.
And to that point, why is the Biden administration reopening a temporary facility for migrant children in Texas?
Well, first, the policy of this administration, as you well know, but just for others, is not to expel unaccompanied children who arrive at the border. And the process, how it works, is that Customs and Border Control continue to transfer unaccompanied children to the HHS Office of Refugee Resettlement. That can take a couple of days. I just want to give this context because people need to understand the process. But because of COVID-19 protocols, the social distancing requirements, the capacity of existing Office of Refugee Resettlement shelters has been significantly reduced because, of course, you can't have a child in every bed. There needs to be spacing, and we abide by those spacing to protect
You're
the kids,
social distancing the kids,
who are living in those facilities for a short period of time. To ensure the health and safety of these kids, HHS took steps to open an emergency facility to add capacity where these children can be provided.
So she's saying, we put them kids in cages. Guess what? We ordered more cages to put them kids in. And on top of that, we're making sure that the kids are updated with the newest propaganda, that they're social distancing, that they're staying apart from one another. Oh, don't worry. The kids are in great care. So you see how that works. They go from admitting that they don't exist to saying, that Trump built them, to coming full circle saying, we're making sure that those kids are safe. We're putting them in cages. We're actually building additional cages. And on top of that, we're making sure that they're practicing social distancing. And now you have information coming out that the child trafficking numbers are back up now that Biden's in office, because all that child trafficking stuff shut down underneath Trump. He actually did a fair amount to it. But now that Biden's back in office, borders back open, get them kids in here, man. Right? We were unfortunately unable to play the video. You might find it on our Telegram. But there were people coming up from, I think, like Guatemala who were like, now that Biden's in office, he says he's going to pay us. And then Biden responded to like that migrant caravan by saying, don't come up just yet. We're not ready for you. We gotta set the stage for you guys first. And so what you're seeing right now is you're seeing a changing of the guard, a sign of the time, a cycling of the herald, so to speak. Right? So while they're criminalizing old America, they're saying those gosh darn constitutionalists, those Christians, those conservatives, those Republicans, those darn white folks and white supremacists, they're criminalizing them. But at the same time, they're creating a whole new indoctrinating thought process for the next generation of Americans, bringing in migrants, demoralizing like the existing remaining American populace, right? Saying your nation doesn't exist, no borders, no walls, no USA at all. Adopt globalism, like we said before. Abandon your nationality, abdicate your identity, absorb yourself into the global citizen mindset. This is a very, very sophisticated plan. And so to close out this segment, I had briefly gone over this earlier this week on the show, but out here in New Mexico, more of that rules for thee, not for me. Do as I say, not as I do mindset. That obey big brother, or in this case, big sister mindset. New Mexico governor held in-person meetings despite the COVID-19 guidelines, spent thousands on alcohol, Wagyu beef, and more. This is an article that comes by Chris Enlow of the Blaze. They put this up February 22nd. And New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham reportedly did not follow her own coronavirus-related gathering edicts and spent thousands of taxpayer dollars on alcohol and luxurious Wagyu beef last year. There was actually information that she came out buying diamonds, all kinds of like while people were locked down here in the state, this witch straight out went to jewelry stores. So you know how Nancy Pelosi got like her whole hair done? Lori Lightfoot of Chicago decided to get her hair did too. Our governor thought it was a momentous thing to get drunk, have like massive parties, right? Go shopping for luxury items and this, that, and the third. And that's how I knew it wasn't about this wasn't about health. This is about soft flexing their power, telling you that you are the peons, that you're the peasants, you're the little people, and they don't care about you. Just last week we talked about it on the show, right? There's a Texas mayor that basically said, hey, listen, you're on your own when it comes to this power outage. This is these people. And so, coming full circle, talking about the Civil War, the secession theory, things like this and more, you're going to have people that see this type of crap and are like, you know what? I'm not down. How do I reclaim my rights and get out of here? Let me get back into this article and close out this segment for you guys. It says, while New Mexico residents face some of the most strict COVID-related restrictions in the nation, Lujan Grisham was reportedly meeting with her staff in person despite advising against such gatherings for New Mexico. Yeah, for sure. That's why you guys hear me literally pumping out all the ideas I can, is because we are still subject to some of the guidelines. It's like if you go to like other parts, Texas or Colorado, they don't have to wear masks. They don't got to do this nonsense because their governors are cool, or at least they get what's going on, or at least the people aren't doing it. This is why I'm churning out ideas left and right on how to fight this, and at the same time, why I understand the secession theory, because of the other conversations I'm privy to and things that are going down, not only in my state, but how we're coordinating with other states, man. Like the efforts to recall Gavin Newsom and impeach Cuomo, we are trying to figure out how to adopt that here, how to replicate that very same system here. Let me get back into this. This is according to the Santa Fe New Mexican. Luann Grisham was holding in-person meetings with her cabinet and New Mexican legislators while telling New Mexican residents not to gather with people they do not live with. The meetings were held at the governor's mansion in Santa Fe despite the widespread use of video conferencing software like Zoom. That mansion where we showed up with a lawsuit against her, she wasn't there. That very same mansion where we had like, oh my gosh, I got to get this out of here. I'm already fired up. You have to understand. These people doing this type of stuff, it's meant to agitate you. It's meant to upset you. But at the same time, you're supposed to do something with it. You're supposed to be able to redirect that frustration into productive action. They want you to get outraged. They want you to get upset. They want you to go to their compromised platforms where they can monitor your outrage and then designate you a threat. They don't want you to get organized. They don't want you to work with other people. They don't want you to become an actual force that they have to watch out for. No, they want to set you up so they can put you in their pre-crime technocratic system. You have to understand what's going on right now. This is what I mean by the domestic aggression, the civil war, the secession theory, and how it isn't just political, it's actually spiritual. How there are some folks that want slavery versus other people who actually want freedom. Maybe me, my God, check this out. This isn't in the show plan, but this is something to worry about as well. Blacklist site asks people to report everyone who voted for Trump to unmask them. An article that comes from the Sons of Time, they put this up February 24th, says conservatives are up in arms over a website that is asking people to report any acquaintance who voted for Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election. Quote, "This is insane. The founders are rolling over in their graves." Real Clear Politics co-founder Tim Bevan tweeted on Tuesday, including a link to the site in a subsequent tweet. Yeah, as soon as the Capitol siege took place, I was scrolling on news feeds, on forums, and on platforms. I stumbled upon an actual website where they had a list of charges against, quote, insurrectionists and seditionists. And so this is the wheelhouse we've entered into. We're in a war. It may not feel like it because Biden's there and you don't want to look at a decrepit old man tell you what's what, but we are in a war. You're going to see how many of our politicians are compromised by China, and then you're going to see how that affects us. There is so much crazy stuff going on. It was kind of hard to try to encapsulate just this segment, but we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about, again, other aspects of Agenda 21, other aspects of Agenda 2030, the Eco-Outrage. We're going to follow up on what we were talking about last week with the corrosive climates, how that manufactured snowstorm and how it devastated things and how that's the future. We're going to be talking about how China is expanding their weather modification program, how the Deschutes Bank admits that the EU will need an eco-dictatorship, as well as the ERCOT members resigning following revelations that they live out of state. So the very same people that are ruling you, right? They don't even live where you are. Same thing happened here. We found out that during the lockdown, our governor went to Hawaii. Information surfaced that she was over here working with China. Like, it's crazy. We're going to be talking about this and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, Eco-Outrage is coming right up. Don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction over here on Factions of Freedom. And we'll be right back right after this.
In a world where secret powers are at play, where nothing is as it seems, one brand of clothing gives crusaders of truth a voice. One brand in the fight against terror, deceit, and destruction. We are not merchants of fear. We are not a parody of free thinkers. It was almost like they ignored it because they wanted it to happen.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat.
This season, get ready to awaken the masses.
Forget the politicians. Politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you.
Forbidden Clothes. Because if you know, you know.
Victimizers beware. The racist and biggest greatest nightmares. Social justice warriors.
It's the bias response team.
If you've been offended, your feelings must be defended. The freedom of expression is a microaggression. Here comes Angela Freddy. He's always ready to fight fascism with fascism.
Starbucks windows don't stand a chance.
Ethic enhancer. He's a systematic racism finder. Using the powers of screaming and shame, they win every debate by calling you names. They're heroes who think that they're victims. Social justice warriors.
And we're back. Oh man, you know it is crazy. Not only how we start the show, how we take breaks in between the show, and just life in general. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking about the Eco-Outrage, what went on in Texas, what that portends for the future, and how that all how all of that works together. You know, I say that they're setting the stage for Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050. And I think, you know, sometime during this season, we're going to actually have an episode where we break that down and really look into it. The socioeconomic reformation, the Great Reset, the socio-political reformation, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the paradigm shift. There are so many things happening right now that we truly are that generation in transition. A lot of things are taking place that are setting the stage for the future. That's why it's all happening so fast and why it's overwhelming sometimes, man. Because it is designed to. They are literally changing the system around us as we are sitting still. They're changing up the rules of the game, right? They're trying to retroactively come after you if you don't parrot the party line the way they want. Things are changing. The socio-political reformation, the socio-economic reformation, the socio-cultural reformation, the Great Reset, Agenda 21, sustainable development, right? The wheels are off. We are off the track now. We are on our own. We are stepping into the New World Order. Make no mistake about it. You know, we talk about those social justice warriors as a joke. But the thought police are coming. I meant to talk about this this week on the show. Maybe I'll do it when I come back. In the Hunger Games, they have things called the game makers, right? Writing it down. Hunger Games, game makers. George Orwell called them the thought police. The author of the Hunger Games called them the game makers, where they progressively kept trying to come up with different obstacles, not only to make things interesting for Katniss Everdeen, but also to simulate adversity, right? To get people to make different decisions, to change up the game. You see? Here, let's go ahead and start getting into stuff. Last week, some very, very insane news came out. People outages morph into outrage as Texans are slapped with a, quote, mind-blowing power bill. This comes from the Activist Post. They put this up February 19th. People that would normally pay something around like maybe $60 or maybe $200 for like a bill ended up paying $3,000 for their bill. Yeah. This comes from Kate and Tony over there on Twitter. It says, when your electric company tells you to switch, but there has been a hold on switching for over a week now, using as little as possible, the 1,300 square foot house, and this is my bill. How is this fair? I only paid $1,200 for the whole year of 2020, and now at the very start. So think about that. 12 years. So for 2020, let's do some quick math. Let's see if I can get it right. $1,200 for a whole year. So that's what? $100 like a month? I hope I did the math right. Yeah, $100 a month for her electricity bill. Get this, she's now having to pay $3,801 and 16 cents, $1.16. $3,801.16. So $100 a month for your electricity bill. And then bam, this outrage, this Texas power outage happens. She gets smacked with a bill for $3,000. Good God. Let me get into this article. It says the rolling blackouts that plunged up to 15 million Texans into darkness amid a historic cold snap are diminishing by the end of the week. About 188,000 customers were without power in the state on Friday morning. Days after power prices jumped from $50 per megawatt to more than $9,000, the horror stories poured in for those who had power this week during grid chaos, as they are mind-boggled about how their energy bills skyrocketed. None of these horrifying power bill stories below should be a shock, as we describe to readers in the piece titled, quote, Power Bills to the Moon, Chaos, Shock, as Electricity Prices Across the U.S. Explode, that this would happen. Texans who were on a variable or index plans with power companies are only now reporting that their bills have jumped hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, for the month. Roy Prish told Newsweek he owes the electric company Griddy $8,162.73 for his electricity usage this month. He said that's a massive increase from his usual $387 bill. It's mind-blowing. I honestly didn't believe the price at first, Pierce said. Quote, it's not a great feeling knowing that there is a looming bill that we just can't afford. Pierce was one of the lucky ones who maintained power through the entire grid crisis, but it came at a steep cost. Quote, there's nothing we can do now. This is already an insane thing, and I don't care about the money when it comes to people's health, Pierce said, adding that if the virus pandemic hadn't affected his work, we could have taken care of this. Other horror stories of soaring power bills flood local television stations across the Lone Star State. When food and housing insecurities are incredibly high due to pandemic job loss, many folks in Texas who were on variable power plans could be financially devastated. Jeez. Yeah, from $100 to $3,800. That's insane. That's insane. And the very people that caused this didn't even live there? Yeah. So if you ask me, I think what this was again another economic attack against Texas, because they had introduced the bill to secede, to step away from the union, a couple weeks beforehand. And what did Chucky Schumer come out and say? I hope those Texans learn their lesson. I think that this was a deliberate attack, the same way that COVID was designed to disrupt our economy. I think that this was a deliberate attack on the people, because Texas is one of those states where they actually could secede from the union and actually become like pretty self-sufficient. But whenever you have again, authoritarian, corrupt government such as our own, they're not going to want that level of independence and leadership. They're going to attack you, and that's exactly what happened. That is insane to me. Truly insane. We're going to be getting into it here shortly. Here shortly how the Texas Energy Company members had resigned after information came out that these guys aren't from here. The same way that Ted Cruz went to Cancun because he didn't have power in his house is the same way that some of these people who were on this board, they weren't subject to their own edicts. So are you noticing a pattern here? Are you noticing how it's, again, rules for me but not for thee, rules for rules for thee, but not for me. I can't help but think of how at the start of this pandemic, remember how there were like all over 1,400 CEOs that left their outposts, that left their post. We thought that was super weird. We were like, wow, why are all these companies like Victoria's Secrets and Under Armour's, why are their CEOs stepping down? Even Bill Gates stepped down. This year, Jeff Bezos stepped down from Amazon. Why are all these people leaving their posts? Could it be that they got the tip that, hey, we're about to steamroll your country? You have a choice. You can either take this severance package and watch from a distance and say nothing, or you can sit here and get violated by us while we take over your country. But here, let me play for you guys this real quick clip of a family who is suing the Texas Energy Company because their child died during the not during the pandemic, during the Arctic storm. So those negligent people essentially cost a life, and they're being sued for it. Let's take a listen.
Conroe family, whose young son died during the winter storm, has enlisted the help of high-profile Busby in their lawsuit against ERCOT and Entergy. The lawsuit alleges gross negligence by the power grid operator and the electricity provider, saying it led to the death of 11-year-old Christian Pendenda. The boy passed away Tuesday after spending the night in his frigid mobile home that lost power. The lawsuit says the Christian died of hypothermia, and the family is asking for more than $100 million in damages. Medical examiners have not yet released the cause of death. We reached out to ERCOT and Entergy about the story. Entergy said, "We are deeply saddened by the loss of life in our community. We are unable to comment due to pending litigation." And ERCOT also issued a statement saying, quote, "We haven't yet reviewed the lawsuits and will respond accordingly once we do. Our thoughts are with all Texans who have and are suffering due to this past week. However, because approximately 46% of privately owned generation tripped offline this past Monday morning, we are confident that our grid operators made the right choice to avoid a statewide blackout." Conroe family, whose young son died during the winter storm, has enlisted the help of
Very, very interesting. You know, I can't help but think about even in that context. My God, an 11-year-old child dying of hypothermia, and what is so again mind-blowing when looking at this, how there were rises of carbon monoxide poisoning, people trying to stay warm. There were videos of floods taking place, houses being destroyed, and it's just gone from the news cycle. And I think, again, this is so crazy because this is that environmental damage. And you see how quickly they were able to move on from it. But people can't move on from that. That family lost their 11-year-old child. Some people lost their lives trying to stay warm in an artificially induced snowstorm. We could talk about El Nino and what's the other one? La Nina, right? How there's two different types of colds. But what's crazy, too, I think about it in the climate change aspect. What was going on in California? What was going on with California Power, Gas, and Electric? How they were also suffering from rolling blackouts. But what was the cover up there while California was having fires, wildfires, directed energy beams, weather modifications, things like that? Oh, well, it was the rolling blackouts. You see how that works? I think what I'm trying to say is what they're doing in the vein of setting up the stage for Agenda 21 is they're trying to figure out how to turn Texas blue, or better yet, how to turn Texas green. Wasn't that Joe Biden's primary thing, trying to shutting down oil and gas? Well, of course he would attack Texas. Of course he would attack those type of people. They're one of the main people that are helping produce oil here in America. So if they can attack our heart, it is so crazy talking about the hybrid warfare, the evolution of warfare through a political lens of how our country is underneath attack and being sabotaged from the inside. I'm trying to figure out the language of manipulation, coercion, and destruction that is just gradually being introduced into our society. This is the austerity measures. They're getting you used to being poor. Oh, you're having rolling blackouts, right? Oh, the food at the store is not there, right? You see how they're just attacking us. They're saying, oh, you guys aren't going to be excellent anymore. Nope. American excellence, Texas excellence, that's archaic. No more. You are not allowed. What you are allowed to do is be broken and destitute. Let's get back into things. Check this out right here. Texas ERCOT members resign following revelations that they live out of state. Huh. An article by Jack Hatfield of National File. They put this up over there on Planet Free Will on February 28th or February 24th. And there's a few other articles I clipped here with it. Let's listen. ERCOT CEO paid $883,000 salary while Texans were saddled with crushing electric bills. This comes from Tatiana Cozzarelli over there at Truth Out Stories. Another one from February 24th. This comes from Arsenio Toledo of Natural News. They put this up February 23rd. Texans have filed multiple lawsuits against ERCOT for failing to adequately respond to the cold snap. And we had just talked about the 11-year-old Peña kid who passed away. Family sues ERCOT energy provider after 11-year-old Conroe boy dies in frigid conditions after power outage. This is by Billy Gates of KRQE News. They put this up February 22nd. It says 4 board members of ERCOT, Texas grid power operator, have resigned following revelations that they lived out of state. ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, is responsible for managing the flow of electricity to the homes of over 26 million residents of the state. The state faced a bout of cold weather and snow last week, sparking huge blackouts and leading to many Texans, quote, shivering in their homes without power, along with claiming the lives of dozens of residents. ERCOT came under severe scrutiny for the blackouts, especially when it was revealed that 4 members of the board, including chairwoman Sally Talberg and recently elected vice chair Peter Crampton, did not even live in the state. In a letter, the 4 board members said that they had, quote, noted concerns about out-of-state leadership of ERCOT. Quote, to allow state leaders and a free hand with future direction and to eliminate distractions, the 4 members will be resigning from the board, quote, effective after our urgent board teleconference meeting adjourns on Wednesday. Now, I've had a very interesting thought on this. Why we're seeing all these resignations, why they're allowing for Cuomo to be impeached, why they're allowing for Governor Gavin Newsom to be recalled, right? I've had a very interesting thought on this. I don't want to seem pessimistic because I think these are good things, people being called out, people getting activated, but it also makes me think, what are they bringing in? Okay? What are they bringing in? They're not bringing in people that think like we do. They're bringing in opportunists that see a chance to capitalize off of a crisis, right? I'll put it to you this way. The person that replaced Jeff Bezos of Amazon was the CEO that made the decision to get rid of Parler. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. So the out-of-state members, right, that resigned, saying, oh, well, we're going to give up leadership to the people in state. That's not a good thing either. Because what damage did they cause, and what are they setting up people for? What are they setting up people for? Just something to think about, right? Just something people should keep in mind. Who knows? These people that were actually shooting, that were actually shouting at, might be the very same people that we needed to stand up for us. But just something to think about. I'm not excusing their behavior, and I'm also not validating any of the decisions that they've made, but it is something that warrants attention. Just like this right here. Former Clinton advisor, America becoming totalitarian state under Biden. An article by Steve Watson of InfoWars that they reposted it over there at Planet Free Will. They put this up February 23rd, and I would have to agree. Biden is an authoritarian. And on top of that, you have the bureaucracy taking care of most of the work for him. When he has those little press briefings with his mask on, I can't help but think of how he's like an old man given like a bunch of coloring books and they're making him seem like he's important. It's not Biden running anything. There's actually, last week there were articles about how Kamala Harris was literally doing interviews and deals with foreign leaders because they know Biden's incompetent. A totalitarian state because we are being ruled by unconstitutional laws and edicts, color of law. This is, again, the rule of man, not the rule of law. Let me read this. It says, author and former Clinton advisor Naomi Wolf warned Monday that the U.S. is devolving into a police state under the Biden administration as endless lockdowns and restrictions show no sight of being lifted. Appearing on Tucker Carlson tonight, Wolf urged that the U.S. is, quote, moving into a coup situation under Democrat rule owing to medical mandates or bowing to medical mandates being extended under the guise of a real medical pandemic. Wolf emphasized that the, quote, lockdowns have never been done in a society, and really, we are turning into a totalitarian state before everyone's eyes. Yeah, I would have to agree. You have the Democrats trying to threaten Joe Biden, saying, give us the nuclear codes. Give us the nuclear football. You are an incompetent. Let a political party, not the commander-in-chief, not a so-called elected official, hold the nuclear football. Let a political party do so. Let a gang of bureaucrats and politicians, snakes in suits, let them hold the political football. Let them decide who holds the keys. And on top of that, you have people saying that, I think it was Nancy Pelosi saying she wants machine guns with tanks on them in D.C. now. So the troops that have been activated and are deployed in Washington, D.C., that's martial law. We are underneath martial law. That's what I'm telling you. We are in a state of civil war. She's right saying that this is a coup-style situation, that we are for sure becoming a totalitarian state, where they are beginning to identify the dissidents, the people, the political opposition that they don't agree with. They're identifying them, dehumanizing them, and then they'll delete them. But see, this is somebody that's a former Clinton advisor that can see this. She probably didn't get the memo that, hey, no, we're supposed to be ruling these people. She's probably a good-hearted person that sees where this is going and doesn't like what's being set up. Let me get back into this. It says, far from being a conservative commentator, Wolf pointed out that it is, quote, not a partisan thing, and told Carson that what is happening, quote, transcends everything that you and I might disagree or agree on. That should bring together left and right to protect our Constitution. Wolf continued, quote, the state has now crushed businesses, kept us from gathering in free assembly to worship as the First Amendment provides, is invading our bodies, which is a violation of the Fourth Amendment, restricting movement, finding us in New York State. The violations go on and on. Quote, autocratic tyrants at the state and now at the national level are creating this kind of merger of corporate power and government power, which is really characteristic of totalitarian totalism, fascism in the 1920s. Wolf further warned, yeah, this is what I have an issue with when I'm reading things like police officers being fired after accused of sharing information with BLM protesters. So not only do you have like ground troops, all right, you got the shock troops, but you also have, again, institutional power, governmental power that's teaming up with the media, corporate power, fanning the flames of what to do, where freedom is considered like a dangerous thing, where you have people like Joy Behar and Hillary Clinton, Joy Behar of The View, and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, saying they need to lock down those anti-lockdown, or they need to arrest those anti-lockdown protesters, that they're domestic terrorists. These people that want to go to work are domestic terrorists. This is what I mean by obey Big Brother. This is what she means by this totalitarian state. Getting back into this, quote, they are using that to engage in emergency orders that simply strip us of our rights, rights to property, rights to assembly, rights to worship, all the rights the Constitution guarantees, the liberal author added. Quote, I really hope we wake up quickly, Wolf proclaimed, adding history also shows that it is a small window in which people can fight back before it's too dangerous to fight back. Less than a week after the election, Wolf expressed regret for voting for Biden, saying that she would never have done so if she had known he was so committed to endless lockdowns. Yeah. She knows what's going on. She sees what's going on. That we are being locked down. We're being demoralized. We're having our rights taken from us. And this is all designed to put us in a state of subservience compliance to where we want to be slaves, to where we don't want to fight back. And this is what we talked about at the start of the show. This is why secession theory is more popular than people would care to admit. This is why you're going to have legitimate autonomous zones, right? This is that Generation Z rebellion, that Gen Z rebellion, driven by malaise and the lack of prospects. They're going to separate from society and create their own. I find it so crazy that this is like a reoccurring theme within the season already. That secession, breakaway civilizations, and things like this are a continuing theme because the tyranny is ratcheting up. I find that very, very interesting. And this is even more interesting. It's like an astonishing admittance of what they're doing. Right here, Deutsche Bank admits that the EU will need an eco-dictatorship to implement the Green New Deal. An article that comes by Jesse Smith over there at Truth Unmuted. They put this up February 24th. And what do you think I'm going to read? I'm going to hear... They've gotten to a point now to where it's no longer a conspiracy theory. It's no longer like a joke. Ha, ha, ha. No, they're legitimately going to create the scientific dictatorship, the technocracy, to where they begin to criminalize and chastise normal human behavior. You're already being pre-programmed with it with COVID. To where those darn dirty Americans didn't learn to lower their carbon footprint. So we have to shut off we have to shut off Texas. You see how China is one of like the main polluters of the planet, but they're perfectly fine. Let me get into this and I'll continue on explaining all this. It says, following President Joe Biden's announcement that the United States would be rejoining the Paris Climate Accord and subsequent reiterations about pursuing a net zero carbon emissions goal by sometime between 2030 and 2050, many are left asking, how is such a radical transition in energy markets and usage practical, let alone even possible? A senior economist at Deutsche Bank warns that for the UE's own Green New Deal to succeed, a, quote, certain degree of eco-dictatorship will be necessary. Needless to say, the implications of this are far-reaching and will penetrate every level of society and the political economy. As this author aptly points out, in order to achieve carbon neutral by 2050, Europe's economy and entire political and legal systems will have to be fundamentally altered. Let me stop right there. This is the socioeconomic reformation. This is the socio-political reformation, the socio-cultural reformation. This is the Great Reset. This is setting the stage for Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, right? You know, somewhere throughout that time period, they're going to have Greta Thunberg on steroids. We covered this before. Eco-terrorists and eco-extremists. We've covered it. People that go and liberate farms, right? But in order to get people to the Greta Thunberg level, you would have to have a dictatorship. You would have to have a perfectly programmed population that's willing to carry out all of this. And so what better way to do that than shutting off the power, right? Disrupting the supply lines, creating artificial scarcity. These are the austerity measures, getting people used to being poor, right? Introduce solar panels, introduce community gardens, multi-generational home dwellings, right? Coffin apartments, renewable technology, clean energy, smart cars. And it sounds like, wow, are you just like not down for the future, EJ? Or like what? No. What I'm saying is you have to look at how this is all designed to control every single aspect of your life. That, yeah, this is the eco-dictatorship. And they will get to a point to where they see, oh, this guy used too much of his electricity. We're just going to have to shut him off. And he used too much of his surplus. To where they will begin to ration out supplies for people, resource management, and population control, but using the environment as a metric system on how hard they need to control you. Let me get back into this article real quick. It says the global warming The Global Warming Policy Forum reports that an analysis published by the Deutsche Bank sharply criticizes the, quote, dishonest debate with which the EU is selling its, quote, Green Deal to the people of Europe. The massive risks of the project for prosperity, the economic system, and the democracy itself should not be concealed, but should be addressed openly. Eric Heyman, a senior economist at the Deutsche Bank Research, warns that Europe's Green Deal and its goal of carbon neutrality by 2050 threatens a European mega-crisis, leading to, quote, a noticeable loss of welfare and jobs. And he warns, quote, it won't work out without a certain degree of eco-dictatorship. The analyst describes it as dubious that the Green Deal is being touted across the board as, quote, a new growth strategy, which would allow the EU to become a fair and prosperous society. While this may look good on paper, Heyman writes, in order to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, Europe's economy and its entire political system will have to be changed fundamentally. Yes. Yes. And how convenient is it that they have rising job loss, rising unemployment, all supply chain disruptions because of COVID? Again, setting the stage for Agenda 21. And while we're still mid-pandemic, you see how they have already created the narrative to talking about climate change. Oh, well, the lockdowns were good. Do you see? It was the most quietest time on the earth. There wasn't as much noise because those darn dirty humans had their masks on. You see how this is a good thing? Meanwhile, there's just like depression, rising, suicide, rising, alcohol addiction, rising, opioid overdoses, rising. Like, this is a good thing. This is good. I'm fine with this. I'm all right with all of these statistics. Yeah, this is that eco-dictatorship. Oh, but do you see the good that you're doing for the earth? You see how they're already getting you used to not caring about yourself, the Machiavellian approach, what's good for the many versus what's good for the one. No, well, you don't need all that extra stuff. There are starving kids in Africa. You don't need to be excellent. Settle at being mediocre. Here's a 17th place trophy. It's like, what? This is, again, how this all works. You see. You will not have a nationalistic flag in this eco-dictatorship, in this scientific dictatorship, underneath this new world order. You will have to pledge your allegiance to them. That's what we're seeing with the LGBTQP plus flag. That's why you see them destroying all of these symbols and only exalting a certain few. Very, very interesting. A eco-dictatorship. Well, why don't you go out there and just say it? But as we are talking about outrage in Texas, mind-blowing power bills, eco-dictatorships, totalitarian states being created by these lockdowns and more, you don't have a lot of people paying attention to what that looks like and how that affects everything else. Again, people not working, paying people to not work, jacking up power bills, right? Doing all this crazy stuff right here. Food prices will climb in 2021 as inflation increases. An article by Patriot Rising, they put this up February 22nd. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. Because of the supply chain disruptions, because of the lack of access, because of the scarcity and more. During the start of the pandemic, how many times did we talk about, unfortunately, chickens, pigs, cows, goats, things like that, millions of them being euthanized because of the thought of them having COVID? We'll be getting into an article here later on in the show where we talk about essentially veganism being introduced because of all of this stuff, because it's a cheap, much more sustainable way to feed the people, because that's a goal for Agenda 2030, that they want to knock out poverty. They want to end human hunger. Well, you can't do that. You can't give people meat, but you can give them leaves. And this is what we talked about earlier on the show, earlier this week on the show with you guys. Veganism, and that being the plan. Eliminating people from animal products and then gradually transitioning them to plant-based diets, courtesy of Monsanto, Bill Gates, and more, to where they can control your diet, to where they can make sure that you don't have all the proper minerals in order to upload the vitamins and the nutrients that you need. Let me get into this. It says it was supposed to be 14 days to hashtag flatten the curve, but now nearly a year has passed since state governments first imposed economic controls and travel restrictions on small businesses and, quote, non-essential people. The repercussions of lockdowns, medical tyranny, and perpetual spending packages continue to have ripple effects on the current economic environment. Starting in the second quarter of 2021, food prices are projected to climb as food companies begin to pass on the effects of inflation to the customers. This inflation is expected to climb throughout the year as production and supply is disrupted, as demand for food staples remains high, and as Congress continues to destroy the value of the dollar. I would have to agree. This is another reason why you need storable goods. Get today's taste at today's rates, because inflation is coming. From the price of edible oils, eggs, and pork have been going up for the past several months. Over the past 12 months, the food at home index increased by 3.9% on average. The price increase for poultry, fish, and eggs rose 4.6%, and the cost of beef rose 5.3%. The demand for basic commodities such as wheat and sugar are rising too. Kraft Heinz Co., the ketchup Kraft, and Conagra Brands, Inc., have already warned that these prices increase will trickle down to the consumers by the spring of 2021. Kraft Heinz CEO Miguel Patricio, Miguel Patricio said he is seeing inflation in, quote, everything related to grains. That will definitely lead to the price increases across many food categories, including items like bread, mac and cheese, and mayonnaise. In the past 12 months, the supermarkets have seen a price increase of 3.2% for cereals, bakery products, and fruits and vegetables. The index for restaurant food also rose 3.9% in that time frame. With 7 straight months of rising food price indexes, food producers are preparing to pass the cost on to customers. These rising food prices are more bad news for people living in the lockdown cities and states, where high unemployment rates and school closings make life difficult for those trying to make ends meet. Now think about that. Inflation, food prices climbing, skyrocketing power bills, all for a virus with a 99.9% like survival rate. Because it's not about the virus, it's about control. And they have a thought process that if they're able to wipe away your power, wipe away your foundation, disrupt you so much, you won't be getting uppity. Right? You won't have any problems with the state. You can't lead a revolution on an empty stomach. And let me tell you, from somebody that has tried to lead a revolution on an empty gas tank over here, it's not easy. You're not going to be able to organize if you can barely keep the lights on. You're not going to be able to lead a revolution whenever your kids are starving. And that's what these people are doing. That's what I'm telling you. We are underneath attack. We are underneath such a evolved form, a 5th generational warfare attack, that people really can't see it. And they can't see that the compliance is a part of the problem. We said before that the masks are killing the economy. Well, here it is. Here it is. What did you think was going to happen? You cannot pay people to not work. This economic model has set us up for such disaster and failure that we are passing on all of this stuff to future generations. They are going to have to come up with a completely new economic model to sustain this. This is where sustainable development comes in. This is the year that they are trying to destroy capitalism, so they can make us communists. Again, it's where you abandon your nationality, abdicate your identity. You see? Join us. Join the collective. Get on welfare. Really think about what these people are doing. The banksters are warning that a Weimar hyperinflation is coming to the U.S. Yeah. That's why some people are saying the stimulus checks, that's helicopter money. That ain't real. That's not going to do anything. That is not, that's a slap in the face. You see, here's a better article for me to get into with you guys. We put it up last week, and I think this is more important than talking about the hyperinflation. Right here, 1 in 10 may have to switch occupations post-pandemic. So we've already talked about how there's millions of people who are behind on rent, millions of people who don't have jobs, millions of people who are now homeless, right? You now have millions of people that are going to, about 17 million people, who are going to have to switch their jobs up. This is the socioeconomic reformation. This is the Great Reset. This is how they're able to, again, destroy the old world order and through that Burning Man ideology, create a whole new one. We're getting rid of oil and gas, right? At the height of a pandemic, when we need the power to protect everything, we're getting rid of that. We need you guys to go green. We need you to stop doing everything you're doing. Don't be so uppity. Get used to being poor. You're not going to have all those amenities. You're not going to go to the concerts. This is them trying to demoralize you. But I can assure you, as this is taking place, there are other things replacing them. Let me get into this article. We put this up February 19th. It comes from the Drudge Report feed. It says 1 out of every 10 U.S. workers, about 17 million all told, will be likely to be forced to leave their jobs and take up new occupations by 2030 as COVID-19's after effects destroy huge swaths of low-paying positions in a labor market that was primed for disruption before the pandemic. Women, ethnic minorities, the young, and the less educated will probably be hit the hardest by what the consultant firm, McKinsey & Co., foresees in a new report as an unprecedented hollowing out of low-wage work in retail, hospitality, and other industries. Quote, COVID is a big disruptor, Susan Lund, a Washington-based partner at McKinsey Global Institute, the consultant's research arm, said in an interview. The 17 million Americans are part of the more than 100 million people worldwide that the Institute forecasts will need to leave their jobs and enter new lines of work by the end of the decade. That will amount to about 1 in 16 workers in the 8 leading economies covered by the study, which includes China, Japan, Germany, and the UK, as well as the US. Yeah, I have to say this just to make like a quick factoid. Point out, I was joking, and I might have it over here on Telegram. Let me see. I was joking with my lady because I saw this article pop up. Yeah, right here from Information Liberation. Let me see if I can get it up for you guys. It says that, what do they say? That, how's it work? Workplace diversity officer is one of the fastest growing careers. And I was joking with my lady about how I could get paid to tell white people that they're racist. That's a career now. and it is. That's the sad truth, is that that is what is replacing education. That is that obey big brother mindset. That is that social justice warrior virtue signaling mindset. This is all of this and more. Yeah, by Chris Minahan. They put this up February 24th over there on Liberation or Information Liberation. This is it's crazy because it shows you again where things are going. That they're going to cram this propaganda down your throat one way or another. You see. Let me see if I can read a little bit of this, and then we'll get back into the regularly scheduled program. But again, I just think this is so interesting that all of this is going down and it's happening so fast. So engineers aren't important, technicians aren't important, scientists, mathematicians, that's not important. But being able to influence people, that's huge. That's what they want for people. They want social media celebrity influencers to propagandize people. And then they also need wards of the state that are willing to carry out the propaganda. It says one of the fastest growing careers in America is that of diversity officer, according to data from the LinkedIn. Very, very interesting. This is from their official Twitter profile. They say one of the fastest growing careers, according to LinkedIn data, is specializing in workplace diversity. Equity leader Dr. Darnisa Amante Jackson joins Hello Monday with advice for those considering this path. Goes back on to say, from LinkedIn, protests sparked by the police-involved shootings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor caused organizations around the world to reckon with the systemic racism and the lack of diversity in positions of power. Companies, large and small, turn to diversity experts who could help them bring new voices into their organizations. Hiring for these roles has increased more than 90% since 2019. Some of the top job titles are diversity manager, diversity officer, head of diversity, diversity coordinator, skills community outreach, teaching, organizational development, Top locations hiring are in New York City, San Francisco, Chicago. Education, 99% of the hires have a bachelor degree or higher, and the salary ranges from $72,000 to $97,000, and they also have a remote job availability. It's pretty low, but you get the point. So while 1 in 10 Americans may have to change their job post-pandemic, you might see some of these very same factory workers becoming diversity trainers. They might end up saying, oh, well, before the pandemic, I was working in the Amazon store, and then I saw that the diversity officer position was rising, and so then I became a part of the system. You see how that works? Just like that. They have now been effectively indoctrinated, and it is their literal job to tell you what to do, to tell you how to be more inclusive. Let me get back into this article about 1 in 10 occupations and how they may have to change post-pandemic, and then I'll play a quick clip for you guys. It says, in a more than 130-page paper, the Institute sees the pandemic accelerating 3 trends that will continue to upend the labor market in the years ahead. More remote work and working from home, increased e-commerce, and a bigger delivery economy, and stepped-up business use of artificial intelligence and robots. See, you're no longer useful. You darn dirty humans, put your mask on. You better not be shaking hands or loving or hugging, because the AI and the robots are watching. Quote, the forces COVID-19 unleashed mean there could be a lot less demand for frontline workers in food service, retail, hospitality, and entertainment, Lund said. That prompted McKinsey to lift its pre-pandemic estimate of how many workers will need to change occupations by 2020 or by 28%, or 3.8 to 17 million. The fallout from the virus will make it harder for many workers to make the switch. Quote, the transition they'll need to make will be even larger and more daunting, Lund said. Quote, it used to be a case that a lot of low-wage workers would go from fast food, say, into retail, and then retail into hospitality, she said. But now, those jobs in aggregate are declining. So most of them will have to move up to a middle-skilled job, say in an office setting or manufacturing, or even higher. That will put a premium on the U.S., significantly expanding the options workers have to learn new skills, Lund said. And this is also a part of Agenda 21. Continuing education, sustainable development of education, and things like this. How can we train and then retrain our workers? How can we make them skilled in ways that are useful for us? Right? Very, very interesting. But that should show you, again, where we are going, what the plan is, and how different the future is going to be. We're going to be moving from a service economy into something much different. Let that be known. Retail jobs, hospitality jobs, things like that, they're going out the window. So they're going to need more high-skilled, higher mental faculty using jobs, things that you actually use your brain for, not your body. We have robots to do that. We need you to be a human. And that's going to really drastically change how things operate, how society as a whole functions. Because rest assured, the robots are coming post-pandemic. They have low carbon footprints. They don't need to take sick leave, and they don't have to worry about the virus, plus humans can operate them. Check this out. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell says that the central bank is looking carefully at the prospect of issuing a digital dollar now that there is technology allowing the bank to do so. Now, I'm going to play this because just last week we had talked about how in Miami they were beginning to pay their workers in Bitcoin. Yeah, last week we had talked about it, how a week before that, Miami was pushing cryptocurrency with a proposal to pay workers in Bitcoin. So think about that. If the jobs aren't there and the money's not there, where's the money going to go? How are things going to switch up? This is the Great Reset. This is the socioeconomic reformation. Let's take a look at this and then we'll continue on.
We are looking carefully, very carefully, at the question of whether we should issue a digital dollar. And it's something that central banks around the world are looking at and doing so appropriately, because the technology now enables us to do that. And it also enables private sector actors to create their own kind of digital quasi money type of instruments. So there are significant both technical and policy questions to do with how we would go about doing that. I would say that we're committed to solving the technology problems and to consulting very broadly with the public and very transparently with all interested constituencies as to whether we should do this. I would also say we are the world's reserve currency, and we have a responsibility to get this right. We don't need to be the first. We need to get it right, and so but this is something we're investing time and labor in right across the Federal Reserve System. You may know that the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston has a partnership with MIT looking at one particular thing. We're doing research here at the board. It does hold out the prospect of the things that you mentioned, very positive. It could help with financial inclusion as well. At the same time, you want to avoid creating things that might be destabilizing or that might draw funds away from the banking system. We have a banking system which intermediates between savers and borrowers. We want to be careful about what the implications are of what we do. So a very high priority project for us. We are looking carefully, very carefully at
a very high priority project. Let me do a little bit of a news blitz when it comes to Bitcoin. Okay. All right. It says that, and this comes from Business Insider by William Edwards. An investment strategist at a $2.6 billion firm shares the reason why he thinks Bitcoin will fall to 25,000 by July, and details why it will see a sharp recovery above 100,000 by the end of the year. Yeah, June or July is whenever the market is going to crash. So if you are into stocks, you're into bonds, you're into options, you're into trading, bet on that, because it's going to do a quick dip and then it'll bounce right back for sure. Bill Gates on Bitcoin, quote, "If you have less money than Elon, you should probably watch out. It uses a lot of energy." That's very interesting. Speaking of energy, humans are the ones that expend it. Bill Gates has a patent where he is able to use your body as a cryptocurrency mining service using your body energy like it's something out of the Matrix. This comes from Business Insider as well. Bitcoin could become digital gold if volatility and liquidity issues subside with regulatory certainty, Bridgewater says. Yeah, a lot of interesting things are taking place with Bitcoin. A lot of very interesting things are taking place in the market, in the economy, in general. You want a perfect example of digital dollars being sent to you already? How is that stimulus check? You get what I'm saying? The digital aspect behind it is one thing, but do you get what I'm saying? That this is how it starts and this is how it works. You're not going to care if you get paid in digital dollars, Bitcoin, money, or whatever, right? It's not going to matter to you. It really won't. And so as people have been broken down, as they have removed people's ability to lift themselves up by their own bootstraps, they are replacing something, replacing the economy, giving you an alternative. Very, very interesting. I want to try to pull up for you guys real quick something that I think encapsulates everything I'm trying to say. It's Akon. He talks about how to create a city. He's creating a futuristic $10 billion solar-powered crypto city. Very, very interesting, because that's literally everything I'm talking about. Elon Musk is trying to build his own Tesla town. You've got you've got Nevada creating those innovation zones. You've got Bill Gates buying his own plot of land. You've got Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia creating Neom, which is a smart city that is 33 times the size of New York. And then you've also got Akon creating his crypto city. So this is where society is going. This is also how this whole breakaway civilization takes place. You see, by other people seeing the writing on the wall, saying, you know what, I'm going to take my time and not invest it in this bull crap and do elsewhere. But one of the things I think is interesting about all of this is how Akon points out the fact that he is creating his own currency. right? That he is creating his own city. That is something that is, pardon my French, badass. Because not only are you giving people the tools of liberation, but you're also teaching them how to do so. You're giving people the ability to link up with you. I think we will talk for sure more about that in the future, but it is just so cool to see where we are at now. It's both good and bad, because again, this is that fracturing of society that's taking place, but nothing is forever. So let's go ahead and start seeing if we can, let me see if we can go ahead and start getting this up here for you guys. And we'll continue on from there. Up here it is. More of that lifetime editing. Audio listeners, you guys can't see this, but I'm literally resizing the video. But enough of that. Let's play Akon breaking ground on his futuristic $10 billion solar-powered crypto city.
My name is Akon, and these are 3 steps to building your own city. And we will also be working on governmental... Yes. First, you have to have a dream. The project itself is a $6 billion project on a 10-year construction build-out. We're going to do it in 3 phases. 3.5 years, phase 1 should be finished. And that consists of the hospital, the Akon Village Resort, the fire station, and the basic infrastructure like all the roads, lighting, and everything like that. The residential part of one, which is condominiums, mansion resorts as well. Step 2, find the best team you can find. Do your research, figure out all the elements that needs to happen. There was projects there or ideas for projects to be put in that area in the past that didn't really formulate well because they didn't go through the procedures. I think the confidence he has in me is because when I first approached to do lighting, it was clear that I had no lighting in my background. So Akon Lighting Africa actually is what's sparking everything that you're seeing now. The goal was, okay, now that we have pilots in 16 countries, now let's start building actual cities that Akon Lighting actually will power. And in step 3, financing. Gotta find the money. The money is going to be the key. That's just going to be necessary to help you finance your dream.
Confidentiality agreements keep him from disclosing most of his investors.
One of our biggest donors is the Mwale Medical Center out of Kenya. And Julius Mwale is the owner of that. His dream was always to build a medical city, a renewable medical city. So he came on board, and he has a family practice that actually does a lot of investment throughout Africa as well, who helped kind of bring in the funding for the $4 billion that we've Africans do at the moment.
So cool. I really do think that's really cool. I can't help but think of how that is so cool. Really. Because I've definitely asked that over here on the show. When was the last time we've ever seen a city created? And here we are. And so it's crazy how it's happening at the end of COVID. Things like this, but it shows you that this is the future. And that these conversations are being had more often than not. So there are your smart cities. There are your futuristic cities. There's your new cities. That's the way of the future. And so I have a couple more articles, like literally 2 more I want to go over with you guys. On the heels of that, we had talked about it beforehand. One where we talk about veganism being introduced to the schools. And then we will finish off this segment talking about China's weather modification program. So as you see, again, this great reset taking place, the socioeconomic reformation, the fourth industrial revolution, and so much more, right? Politics is downwind from culture. So you see people creating politics that gets around this green ideology. Right here, French city removes meat from school lunches, slammed for, quote, putting ideology on kids' plate. An article from Natural Blaze, they put this up February 23rd. It says consuming meat has become a cultural staple across the world. But with the surging middle class in China and elsewhere demanding for beef, pork, and processed chicken erupting, global elites are pushing for societies to consume a plant-based diet because they say there's a clear linkage between the worldwide livestock industry and greenhouse gas emissions. So because China is demanding more pork, more beef, more processed chicken, we all have to eat plant-based meats. So they get everything good, but not you. But they make it cool. They make it trendy, right? You don't want any of those pesky greenhouse gas emissions. You care about the earth, right? Very, very interesting. And so the reason that I did that little derail into Akon's smart city, his crypto city, after talking about digital dollars, is because they're through incrementalism, they're gradually talking to you and telling you what their plan is. And if you can pay attention and put two and two together, you can see how they're setting not only the stage for Agenda 21, but creating that technocracy, creating that new world order, bit by bit. The damage has been done to us. It's for those that come after that they're doing all this for right now. Getting back into this article, it says, of course, France would be the first to mix politics with food. French agriculture minister Julien de Normandie denounced school officials in Lyon, the city capital in France's Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, who removed meat from the menus. School officials conveniently scapegoat COVID-19 protocols as the reason for the removal, according to RT News. Quote, let's stop putting ideology on our children's plate, de Normandie tweeted on Sunday. Quote, let's just give them what they need to grow well. Meat is part of it, he wrote, adding that he had asked the region's prefect, a state-appointed official, to overrule the move. In an email dated February 15th addressed to elected officials of the city, the assistant in charge of education, Stephanie Leger, announced that, quote, single menu without meat to serve students more quickly and streamline meals. She said the new menu would continue until Easter. Quote, the new health protocol imposes a separation of 2 meters in school catering. The single menu will allow us to speed up the service and thus allow us to welcome all children, Leger told agents AFP. Quote, to correspond to the taste of the greatest number, we decided to remove the meat, she said, adding that it will, quote, is not a vegetarian menu, since fish or eggs will continue to be served in the 206 schools in the city. Besides de Normandie, other officials found the measures to exclude meat from school lunches as, quote, unacceptable. Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin labeled it an, quote, unacceptable insult to French farmers and butchers. Quote, we can see that the moralizing and the elitist policies of the Greens exclude the popular classes. Many children often only get to eat meat at the school canteen, Darmanin tweeted, calling it, quote, a scandalous ideology. Yeah, and we've talked about this over here on the show as well. Veganism, essentially, all of that is very, very interesting, but kids need a well-rounded diet. They need blood. Blood. They need to get bloody. They need to get dirty out there in the streets, build up their immune system, go play in the backyard. But they need the juices. They need the proteins. They need the fatty acids. They need all that stuff to help their brains grow, not just their bodies, but also their minds. There's certain oils that can only get to our brain from eating types of meat. But I'm no health nutritionist or anything like that, but I'm seeing an obvious orchestration taking place. You see, and they normalize eating disorders with veganism. You get me? And so now that veganism has become normalized, it's okay to be malnourished. It's okay to be like, it's okay. And I'm not knocking any of our vegan friends or any of our vegan audience. You guys know what I'm trying to say. Because this next article I'm trying to pull up here for you guys is the kicker, right? This is the other shoe to drop. Boom. China to expand weather modification and make a large portion of their climate artificial. An article that comes from Collective Evolution by Aaron Walia. They put this up February 23rd. And now think of this. Okay? I told you that Bill Gates is now a farmland owner. Monsanto, their pesticide, glyphosate, causes all kinds of problems. What did we just read about? How they're taking meat away and introducing plant-based diets. But see, that's the thing, is even the plants now are unnatural because they're artificially grown. And what we're about to get into is just that. So in this segment, we've talked about an eco-dictatorship, a totalitarian state, the Texas Energy Council members resigning because they didn't live in the state, Akon's Solar City, and now we're about to get into how China has a weather modification program. Do you think that China deployed that weather modification program in Texas to disrupt us even more? Who knows? You'll hear about how we have a history of messing with people's weather, getting involved in things like weather warfare. We could talk about HARP, right? Directed energy weapons and things like this and so on and so forth. But what I'm trying to say in this aspect is who is growing your food? What are you eating? Are those heirloom seeds or were those GMO seeds? Because there are studies, which we've covered here on the show, about organic eating versus natural eating. Let's get into this, right? China announced that it is planning a rapid expansion to its weather modification program. Most people probably don't even know that China has a weather modification program. The changes include modifying the climate in an area that is more than one and a half times the size of India, covering an area of 5.5 million square kilometers, which is 2.1 million square miles. In fact, China has been modifying their weather for decades, and they've used the technology at local levels as well. They were quite open about modifying the weather for clear skies ahead of and during the 2008 Olympics. According to The Guardian, the proposed enlargement is on a scale that could affect regional weather patterns. The cabinet said that it wanted to extend the artificial rain and snow program to cover at least 2.1 million square miles of land by 2025. The long-term plan envisages that by 2035, the country's weather modification capabilities would reach a, quote, advanced level and focused on revitalizing rural regions, restoring ecosystems, and minimizing losses from natural disasters. Now think about that. This is, again, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and Agenda 2050. They're trying to transition us away from oil, gas, and things like that and get us used to electric power, environmental power, and things like this. And climate change, weather modification is going to be a huge part of that. Our boy Billy Gates is deeply involved in that. So what former CIA Director John Brennan calls stratospheric aerosol injections. Now think about this. This is weather modification. This affects us. Look at how paralyzed Texas was momentarily. They start messing with the weather. Bill Gates is trying to spray calcium carbonate, chalk into the sky to reflect the sunlight. God only knows what that's going to do to our environmental system, dude. God only knows what's going to happen when just China gets into that isolationist mindset, right, that they like to get into, only worried about what they're doing, caring very little about how it affects the rest of us. You get me? And we've talked about this too. This is one of the main things people worry about with weather modification. This is going to play a huge part in immigration and mass migration and more. We talked about this, how directed energy weapons and weather modification create uninhabitable zones. Can you imagine making someplace like, I don't know, let's just say like Iran, even more dry than it already is? Those people are going to leave when their farmlands when it can't produce anything because they are being artificially suppressed. Where are they going to go? So this is a this is bigger than most people think, right? Our manufacturing comes from China. They're over here literally about to revitalize their rural regions and restore ecosystems. They laughed at Texas, calling that whole debacle a failure of capitalism. Let me get back into this. It says it's not just China that is engaged in such activity. It was used by the U.S. during the Vietnam War with Operation Popeye. Look into it. General Electric started to conduct their first weather modification experiments in 1946. In 2020, Iran accused Israel, the United States, of modifying the country's climate for warfare purposes. According to the then president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, prior to his death, quote, the U.S. Navy launched a weapon capable of inducing a powerful earthquake on Haiti. This time it was only a drill, and the final part of it is destroying and taking over Iran. Quote, weather modification is generally considered to be the deliberate effort to improve atmospheric conditions for beneficial human purposes. Not all weather modification activities, however, have been designed to benefit everyone and have been used for purposes of war. In addition to specific research programs sponsored by federal agencies, there are other functions related to weather modification which are performed in several places in the executive branch. Various federal advisory panels and committees and their staffs established to conduct in-depth studies and prepare reports to produce or to provide advice or recommendations or to coordinate weather modification programs have been housed and supported within executive departments, agencies, and offices, end quote. It says a United States government document printed at the request of the United States Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation in November of 1978. Yeah, so this has been going on for quite some time. What's actually funny is you guys can find it on our Instagram page in one of our highlights. We have patents for weather modification that go all the way back into the 1800s. Why are we reading about how China's expanding their weather modification? Is because now we are in this new world order, and now we see the threat of China, and I am very, very worried about where this will set us. If they are literally laughing about how we responded to the Arctic freeze, that cold snap in Texas, while saying, hey, look, we can modify our weather, that should paint a picture for you. You see? So all I'm going to say as we take this break and go into the break is get storable goods. From power outages, food shortages, race riots, unemployment, eviction, currency manipulation, mass immigration, supply line disruption, food banks being overrun, you need to get storable goods. And if not from us, you need to be prepared. You need to get a generator. You need to get a water filtration unit. You need to get I would say some solar panels and renewable generators, but those things die out on you. And so in this war of attrition, this war over freedom versus slavery, it's going to take every single thing we have, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Eco-Outrage, and we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about how the Canadian government was sued for forcing quarantine on citizens at secret locations. That's right. You have evil evolving because the Satanic Temple has filed a lawsuit for the religious right to kill babies and abortions. It is insane. You also have an epidemic of loneliness coming out and how it is spreading across America. A Harvard study proves this, and how there are many other things taking place. We're going to be talking about this and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction over here on Factions of Freedom, and we'll be right back right after this.
Food supplies have been completely wiped out. We have a evacuation of all counties. I report complete devastation. We have a giant squall, cloud, gobbling up everything in their path.
There are forces in this world that remind us of how fragile we are. We thought we were safe. We thought it could never happen to us. Then life like a fog descends upon us, blanketing our memories. Through the haze, we travel its hidden paths, lost in its secret places. And when the storm, turbulent and immovable, forces us to shelter, we remember. It calls to us, calls us back. Back to the ports and the harbors of our past. We fight the currents that pull and drag us off course, not a light or star to chart the way. And when we arrive, we don't always know it at first, the places we once loved guised by time. Then we see it, the place we've been trying to get back to. Safe at last, we've found our way home.
Welcome back. Final segment. Welcome back, my friends. I'm going to be playing for you real quick a man by the name of Chris Sky, who was flying back, making his way back to Texas, or making his way back to Canada, and decided, I'm not taking your stupid tests. Let's take a listen.
Got my bags, and we're gonna go outside. We're gonna refuse their stupid test, and tell everybody to refuse the stupid test. So, yeah. Hi. Yes, because I have a medical condition, so I don't need to wear one. And I'm also a Canadian citizen, and this is a violation of our Charter Right, Section 6, and a violation of the Emergency Act 14.1. So I'm going to be declining your test today. Thank you very much. No problem. I'll happily do that. Everybody in here, if you are a Canadian citizen, simply deny the test, deny their quarantine, and there's nothing you can do. They cannot stop you. They cannot force you. You are a citizen. You have rights. If you want to wait in the line for 2 hours, let them put shit up your nose, go right ahead. But if you have a brain and you have balls, just say no. That's fine. I have a camera on as well. So, yes, everybody, this is what you do. You say no to their test, no to their quarantine, and if you're a citizen or a permanent resident, there's absolutely nothing they can do but acknowledge that you have rights, and they have to respect that. Is that not true? Say it's true for the camera, everybody. Say it's true.
So you have some identification?
I do, of course. That's not a problem.
You refuse to take the test?
I refuse to take your test 1,000,000%.
No problem.
And everybody in here, Canadian citizens, you can refuse the test. Just say no, don't wait in line, and there's nothing they can do. Okay, I will not yell, that's true. But I just want you guys to acknowledge for 91,000 people watching that anybody can refuse the test.
Yeah, I'm just giving you identification.
Perfect. Thank you. You guys hear that? Straight from the horse's mouth, straight from the police, refuse the test. Ooh, I'm getting a ticket. Oh, not another one of those tickets. You know, tell everybody how many people have been convicted of those tickets in Canada. Answer? 0. How many people have been charged? Thousands. How many people convicted? 0. Why? It's a violation of our charter rights. So when that ticket goes to court, they throw it the fuck out. It's that simple. So I'm waiting for my little fine. Thanks, guys. I just want everybody to acknowledge that this is perfectly legal, perfectly acceptable. Thank you. Got my bags.
Attaboy.
And we're going to go outside.
Attaboy. More of that. More of that level of energy. More of that. That's what we need to see. That's leadership. That's where we're going. Enough of this talking. More action. After new policy mandating Canadians to take an airport COVID test to determine whether they will have to undergo quarantine at a government facility was introduced yesterday. A viral video clip shows a man refusing to take the test before being issued a fine. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau outlined the details of the new policy in a tweet yesterday afternoon. Quote, which means this dude got Justin Trudeau to watch him. That's what's up. I appreciate that. This dude got Justin Trudeau to hop on Twitter and say, excuse me, if you're flying, here's what it actually says. Update. If you're flying back into Canada, you'll need to show a negative PCR test result before you board the plane. And as of today, you'll need to take another PCR test when you land. You'll then have to wait at an approved hotel at your own expense for your test results. Trudeau tweeted. Under the rule, if the test is negative, Canadians are still forced into quarantine in their own homes. A policy that will be enforced according to Trudeau. Yeah, no. That's bullcrap. That's bull hockey. Because if it's, again, this is that rule of man. Obviously Justin Trudeau's not getting the picture that people don't want to be ruled like this. That people are finding, he said it right there. These are unconstitutional. Even when they give you the ticket, they have to throw it out because there's no law for it. So they're essentially just trying to threaten you into being compliant. And those jackboots of the state, those TSA agents, they knew right off the bat, hey, you have rights. They have to respect it. I know that doesn't, in this 1984 world, it doesn't make sense. But see, that's because we've been so disenfranchised from our power and from our rights for so long that the very act of standing up for them or for yourself is considered like a crime. How dare this person not want to be a slave? Check this out. Canadian government sued for forcing quarantine of citizens at a secret location. This comes from Great Game, India. They put this up February 18th last week. It says a legal group in Canada is planning to sue the federal Canadian government against the COVID-19 travel rule, which is being used to quarantine citizens forcefully at secret locations. What's crazy is if you follow up on the story of Chris Sky, they because he's been arrested so many times fighting this COVID tyranny, both in Canada, Ireland, and all over the place, he's basically on house arrest now, and they got the laws so rigged up against him that if he violates like his releasement order, like his agreement, like if he goes to the store, goes outside real quick, and they catch him outside of his house for violating like the quarantine PCR test nonsense, the COVID nonsense, they'll arrest him. So they won't arrest you for violating their edicts, but they will arrest you and try to entrap you with some of their arbitrary laws. Like, it's crazy. But let's get into this article. It says, since the inception of the COVID-19 pandemic, almost all the countries have modified their travel rules, especially for immigrants. Similar COVID-19 travel rules were enforced by the federal government in Canada. However, one of the prominent legal groups, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, is not in favor of forced quarantine imposed as a new part of the travel rules. The president of the JCCF, John Carpe, gave a statement in a news release sent out last Friday. As per John Carpe, quote, quarantine, particularly of healthy or asymptomatic individuals, is the functional equivalent of house arrest, and the Justice Center will not allow it to continue unchallenged. Quote, these citizens are being held unlawfully despite not having been convicted of any offense, not having access to a lawyer, and not having appeared before a judge. Law enforcement officials are apparently refusing to inform family members of where their loved ones are being held. Yeah, this is true. I've seen videos of mothers that are crying because they can't figure out where the school sent their children due to the COVID stuff. This is insane. That's what I'm saying. We are seeing years worth of our rights being wiped away, all because we're capitulating and being compliant and not fighting back. Getting back into this, it says, quote, "This outrageous policy aligns with the world's most repressive and undemocratic regimes and is totally unacceptable. The JCCF confirmed that illegal action will be taken against the federal government under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The main reason behind this legal action is the fact that Canadian travelers are being quarantined in hotels. Nikki Mattis, one Canadian citizen, was forcefully quarantined in Canada when she returned from the U.S. In spite of having a negative COVID-19 report with her, Mathis was sent to a quarantine hotel and its location was not known to her. The reason told to her was that the report didn't meet the parameters set by the Canadian authorities. However, the situation became worse when Canadian authorities didn't inform even her husband about her quarantine location. This step was highly criticized on online platforms. Many other travelers claimed that this medical isolation made them feel like prisoners. Angelo Venegas, another victim, said that, quote, "I feel like a prisoner in here, you know." Venegas also added that he was not supplied adequate food and was compelled to stay in a small room for 14 days. Yeah, they're trying to have you go crazy. They're trying to have you go crazy. And if it's not for people like Chris Sky fighting back and giving people hope, people would go crazy. But that's the plan. Disappear you, getting used to people disappearing, not getting information, just saying, you're not learning anything. We're not telling you anything. What you see is what you get. No more. Insanity. Truly, it is insane to think about this. And now, you have governments, mainly in Israel, launching the Green Pass. I'll describe for our audio listeners. There is a security gate into a supermarket. People are having to show proof of vaccination. And then they are given a star or some type of sticker that gives them entry into said supermarket. The gentleman takes his test.
מרוצה אדוני? מרוצה שנפתח? מרוצה שנפתח? מרוצה? בטח שאני מרוצה. סוף כל סוף אפשר, התחסן.
And unfortunately, I cannot understand what they're saying. But before I get into this article, like, think about this. In Israel, right? Supposedly the Holy Land. They have now instituted the mark of the beast and the people can't even tell. I feel like that is pretty crazy. But that is how subtle and covert the devil is. You know, I was at the gym earlier this week, and this guy I hadn't seen in months, because I hadn't been to the gym in months. Fat piece of crap now. He's like, yeah, man, I just got back from a 3-month trip in Israel. And he's like, it took me like 2 weeks to try to get out of there. Because every time it was my time to leave, they had changed the travel restrictions. He's like, I started getting worried that I wasn't going to be able to leave. This is a guy that works over here at one of these computer companies. It's either Intel or Dell. Yeah, it's Intel. I think it's Intel. And he's pretty high up there, but he was out there for 3 months when all this stuff started going down. They locked stuff down, they opened up stuff, and they started locking things down again. He was trying to get out of there, but every single time that his date came up, they pushed the date back or they changed like the restrictions. And I asked him, I was like, wow, bro, like that's crazy. Did they put you in quarantine? He's like, yeah, they did, for sure. And it was weird. I was like, wow, that sounds very dystopian. Like, tell me more. Tell me more about like this dystopian experience that you had. And he was like, yeah, it was crazy how much more locked down they are in Israel. And I say that as I'm showing you video clips of individuals having to show proof of vaccination before they enter a supermarket. And I'm worried about our governor having Wagyu beef and alcohol. He was grateful. It's a Christian brother. We used to trade scripture all the time whenever I saw him at the gym working out. But you know, he was so grateful to be back in the States, because he was like, you have no idea how crazy things are over there. And he's like, I was just lucky I made it out of there, because for a while there, it didn't seem like it was going to happen. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to eliminate travel. They're trying to keep people in their sector where they're propagandized to where they have their own, as Joe Biden would say, cultural norms, to where they're able to enforce globalism locally. Let me read a little bit of this, and then I'll move on. This comes from the Times of Israel. They put this up February 22nd over there, the Technocracy News. It says, get the vaccine or recover from COVID itself, and you get a green pass to participate in society. Try to trick the system, and you will be criminalized and thrown in jail. This denies citizens' rights to informed consent. The Health Ministry on Thursday launched the long-awaited, quote, Green Pass certificate, which will enable those vaccinated or recovered from the coronavirus to take part in various activities. At the same time, the ministry warned of serious legal penalties for those who falsify the passes. Health Minister Yuli Edelstein, Ministry Director General Shezi Levy, and other health officials presented the new certification and demonstrated the methods of issuing the QR code secured pass, which has been the target of skepticism following the reports demonstrating how easy it is to falsify. Cabinet ministers on Monday approved the reopening of stores, gyms, hotels, and other venues starting Sunday, in a major easing of sweeping lockdown measures meant to slow the spread of COVID-19. Street front shops, malls, markets, museums, and libraries will be open to all Israelis, but only to those who have been vaccinated or who have recovered from COVID-19 will be able to use the gyms and pools, attending sporting events and cultural events, and stay at hotels. To be allowed to open Sunday, relevant business owners must undertake to scan for the pass and only accept those carrying it. In a further easing of restrictions, the Health Ministry and the Prime Minister's office said Tuesday that the government will allow outdoor gatherings of up to 20 people and indoor gatherings of up to 10. Gosh golly, starting Friday. The previous rules restricted outdoor gatherings to 10 people and indoors to 5. Those eligible will be able to get the Green Pass using 3 methods starting Sunday, February 21st. They can either download the Traffic Light Ramzor app on Google Play and the Apple App Store, entering personal details and getting the pass on one's phone, or they can sign up on the Health Ministry website and download a printable personal document, or they can call the Health Ministry's hotline at 5400 and having the pass sent by email or fax. So here's what I'm going to say. What you need to do is download those forms, those consent forms that we talk about too frequently over here on the show. Let's see if I can pull it up for you. Download some of these forms right here. Yep, that we put up. We reposted it this week. Employer coercion, no consent for medical testing, the refusal of vaccination, and the vaccination notice form. Take those forms with you while you have your Green Pass, and you can tell those people, I have recovered from COVID, I do not consent to medical testing, and I'm quite all right. I would still like to use these facilities, because what's going to end up happening is a clash. You're going to end up having people who say, you know what, you're being too much of a hassle, just get the vaccine, just get the shot, let's just move on. Fully unaware of how they are gradually introducing the mark of the beast into it. QR code enabled documents. The mark of the beast. You will neither be able to buy nor sell without receiving the mark. That is Revelation chapter 13. Think about that. They're telling you, hey, everything else is opened for the people that have the vaccine. And think about that. That's them outright telling you, you will not be able to participate in society unless you bend the knee. This is going to be a very, very interesting future. And so as all of this is coming out, as you have biblical prophecy unfolding, you have a Vatican cardinal who warned against the evils of the deep state being removed by Pope Francis. We went over this earlier this week on the show when talking about trans-spiritualism, because the corrupt church is being replaced by the flag of the LGBTQP+, right? To where they're eradicating religion, right? The notes from earlier this week that they want you to abandon your nationality, abdicate your identity, You are no longer you. You are no longer allowed to be you. You see? Because this is a worldwide agenda of the devil. Archbishop Carlo Vigliano said that COVID-19 is a global conspiracy to usurp God and humanity. We have top officials from the Vatican coming out telling you we are in prophetic days. These people are carrying out a dark plan. They literally only have one chance to shoot their shot and to try to wake folks up before the evil consumes them. Let's get into this, and then we'll continue on. This comes from Nemus Harris over there at News Post. They put this up February 23rd. It says, a top Catholic cardinal who blew the whistle on the deep state's plan to destroy Western civilization has been removed by Pope Francis. Francis accepted the resignation of Cardinal Robert Serra as a head of the Vatican's Office of Liturgy. However, the, quote, resignation was actually a firing because Serra was forced to submit his resignation when he turned 75, and Pope Francis previously allowed cardinals to serve 2 or 3 years past that point. Cardinal Serra also indicated that he wanted to continue in the role, but says that the Pope removed him due to his outspoken conservative views. Summit.News reports that Serra was a powerful voice in resisting the liberalization of Catholicism and has repeatedly spoken out in blunt terms about the problems facing the West. Quote, what Nazi fascism and communism were in 20th century, Western homosexual and abortion ideologies and Islamic fanaticism are today, said the Cardinal, something the Pope, who all but defended the right of the Charlie Hebdo killers to launch a revenge attack, wouldn't dare utter. Serra has also identified mass immigration as a direct threat to the Western civilization and Christendom. He previously warned that, quote, the West will disappear as a result of mass migration, adding that, quote, Islam will invade the world and completely change culture, anthropology, and moral vision. Serra has also routinely savaged modernity, highlighting how Westerners have lost faith in the knowledge of God due to the temptations of the material world, and that, quote, Western civilization is in a profound state of decadence and ruin. I would have to agree. Everything this man is saying is on point. I can understand why the Pope Francis had to get rid of him. They can't have this man speaking truth. No. They got to replace him with somebody that's down to do the propaganda, right? Propagandize the folks. Stop telling them the truth. We're the church. What are you doing? Getting back into this, it says, warning that the Western civilization is living in its, quote, mortal hour. Serra said that just like during the collapse of the Roman Empire, quote, the elites care for nothing but increasing the luxury of their daily lives, and the people have been anesthetized by every more vulgar entertainments, degeneracy, decadence. Given these statements, it's unsurprising that the Pope, who is an avowed globalist, acted to remove Serra and prevent him from becoming a future Pope. Yeah, for sure. This is again a part of the socio-cultural reformation, the Great Reset. Yeah, while you have there are people trying to wake up the people, but this is what I mean by evil evolving. They now let people tell their truth just so they can say, yeah, you're right, we are that evil, and there's really nothing you can do about it. But that's all deception. That truly is all deception. As I've said before, I thoroughly believe that a fair amount of this evilness has to come out here into the public. Everybody else has to see it, instead of us so-called conspiracy theorists, in order to create this great awakening. You see, this is again a part of that socio-cultural reformation. Evil is evolving, yes, but righteousness must rise to quell it, and it is. But in order for us to rise, we have to figure out that righteous indignation, that rage, that power that comes from within inside the soul, not the soul itself, within inside the soul, that recognizes the human divinity within every single one of us and how it's being destroyed. Yeah, we have to see the adversity, we have to see the problem in order to quell it and rise above it. And what are some of the problems? Well, this right here, check it out. Satanic Temple files lawsuit for religious right to kill babies in abortions. An article that comes from Harbinger's Daily. They put this up February 23rd. And here it is. These Satanists they feel like they have a right to have access to your babies, to kill babies, to take part in this. So while they might not be outright doing rituals in public, holding seances in black masks, right? Engaging in satanic rituals, child sex abuse, satanic ritual abuse, and more. They will politically ritualize you. And that's what people have to understand. When they do stuff like this, they understand that we live in a climate of evil. They understand that they can make declarations like this because you have a weak and inept populace that has become morally decadent, that does not stand up for anything. We are not spiritually strong. So, of course, you would have an organized group of Satanists filing lawsuits so that they can be politically in alignment with these type of views. Let's read this, and then we'll continue on. It says Texas is a new target of the Satanic Temple, and its plan to challenge pro-life laws based on the notion that aborting an unborn baby is, quote, a religious right. This month, funded in part by the abortion of an unborn baby that it raffled off in August, the Satanic group filed a lawsuit arguing that Texas informed consent laws violate its members' religious freedom, the Dallas Observer reports. Texas requires abortion facilities to provide informed consent information to women at least 24 hours prior to doing the abortion. This includes requiring abortion facilities to do an ultrasound and share the unborn baby's image with the mother, as well as provide an informational packet about the abortion, fetal development, abortion risks, and the resources for parenting and adoption. The lawsuit, filed on behalf of an anonymous Texas member who was pregnant, alleges that these laws violate her religious beliefs. The Satanic Temple also asserts that an abortion is a religious right. Now, good God, I can't even read any more of this. This woman literally went after the Satanic Temple to help her file her case in order for her to get an abortion. And so they would have made it a whole deal for the whole world to know. They say, hey, it's a religious right to kill your child. This is insanity. This is more that trans-spiritualism. You don't want to have ownership or accountability of your actions. You don't want to make the necessary changes in your life because of the decisions you made. No. Hop on social media, find some degenerate scumbag people who don't really care about you, that want to take up your cause, cram it down other people's throats, grandstand and virtue signal about how good they are, and destroy not only your life, but the future of many other people's lives in the process. Yeah. That's where we're at. It is truly a shame to see spiritually the decadence that we have gradually accepted. Insanity. I don't even know what to say to that. It might be because I got the phone call of the gender of my baby mid-show that I'm like, this is all starting to hit a little bit at home, like the evil, the mindset of these people that we're literally going against, like the decadence, the perversion, the degeneracy. I wish I could say the lackadaisical behavior, but the apathy, the suicide spirit, the parasitical nature of the people we're dealing with. It is because it's really starting to hit home. And I don't know if that's good, because it's going to switch from talking politics to eliminating a threat. You get me? And it's moving quite fast, very, very fast. With everything that is just happening at breakneck speed. And so very, very sad that we're going to have eco-dictatorships and religious rights to kill our babies. We're so woke, dude. We're so open-minded that we're literally about to kill the population because, well, we have nothing else to do. We literally are doing everything backwards. We are at a state of I really wouldn't know what you would call us. A godless nation? Well, you worship the devil, but he's not a god. A satanic society? Well, that's something. We don't give a crap about nothing. But we can't spend time on this because this is a deep, deep issue that I think everybody's inherently feeling right now. That evil is just getting away. That's why we did the minicast like a couple weeks ago. See, hear, and speak no evil. Put that mask on, cover up your ears, put them headphones on, and put the shades on. You better not talk about the evil and how it's working. This is insanity. But here, let's bring it back down to a more political level for our audience members. That just makes me sick. We have played clips over here on the show where you have where you have people at protests eating mock hearts. That's what I'm going to say. Could be a mock heart. Eating mock hearts letting blood drip from their mouth, from said heart, all over their body, giving praise to Kali, the goddess of destruction, saying praise to the chaos god, dancing in a circle at a protest. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that these people, the Satanic Temple, decide to get themselves involved in politics only to spiritually corrupt the landscape. It's sad. But here, let's let me play this quick clip for you guys, and then we'll continue on. This is Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland vowing to prosecute white supremacists who stormed the U.S. Capitol.
Let me ask you about assaults on federal property in places other than Washington, D.C., Portland, for instance, Seattle. Do you regard assaults on federal courthouses or other federal property as acts of domestic extremism, domestic terrorism?
Well, Senator, my own definition, which is about the same as the statutory definition, is the use of violence or threats of violence an attempt to disrupt democratic processes. So an attack on a courthouse while in operation, trying to prevent judges from actually deciding cases, that plainly is domestic extremism, domestic terrorism. An attack simply on government property at night or any other kind of circumstances is a clear crime and a serious one and should be punished. I don't know enough about the facts of the example you're talking about, but that's where I draw the line. One is both are criminal, but one is a core attack on our democratic institutions.
Let me ask you about assaults on federal property in places other than Washington, D.C.
So while I pause that, I'll go ahead and read this. It says, Joe Biden's Attorney General pick Judge Merrick Garland pledged to the Senate Judiciary Committee on Monday that he will prosecute white supremacists who stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. This is the new America. Trending Politics reported that in an opening statement released ahead of his Monday testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, Garland pledged to focus the Justice Department's prosecutorial efforts on, quote, white supremacist rioters. Quote, if confirmed, I will supervise the prosecution of white supremacists and others who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, a heinous attack that sought to disrupt a cornerstone of our democracy, the peaceful transfer of power to a newly elected government. Garland's opening statement reads, quote, that critical work is but a part of a broad scope of the department's responsibilities. In keeping with that line of thinking, Garland said he planned to talk about an urgent mission to ensure all American civil rights were being upheld following riots that occurred in the wake of George Floyd's incident in May. Quote, that mission remains urgent because we do not yet have equal justice. Garland's opening statement reads that, quote, communities of color and other minorities still face discrimination in housing, education, employment, and the criminal justice system and bear the brunt of harm caused by the pandemic, pollution, and climate change. It's crazy because I'm just hearing all of the talking points. You know, I can't help but think of while reading that how they're purging people of their ideology, right? But how at the same time, wasn't this the guy? I think there might be more information that comes out about this later. Wasn't this the guy who was a part of Homeland Security during Hurricane Katrina? He was the one that said, hey, when you go in to rescue people, make sure you confiscate their guns and their firearms first. When you go into those high lands, those high areas, make sure you confiscate the guns. We don't want those people to start fighting back. I think this was the guy. Maybe we'll find a story about that later on in the future, but back to the getting people to abdicate their ideology, having people abandon who they are. I think it's crazy that you got a white guy up there talking about prosecuting white supremacists because, again, this is the purging of an ideology. Even though this guy might be white, he's saying, I will go after white people. It's the same thing with like Kamala Harris. Even though she thinks she's black, she's going to go after black people. They need these figureheads that regurgitate the propaganda, that do the things they need done. You see, and that's where this is all heading. We are definitely going to see a lot more persecution take place. We are definitely going to see people being arrested. I went over it just the other week of how you have people at the FBI arresting people. I played the clip on our Instagram Live earlier this week on the show of a lady in Florida drinking some Jack Daniel's cinnamon whiskey talking about how the FBI wanted to investigate her. They ended up arresting her, and how you have the leadership being arrested. You see them stirring up stuff amongst the ranks. The resistance is being targeted. And that man right there, Merrick Garland, is going to lead the charge. And so, on top of all this going down, them labeling people domestic terrorists, political extremists, threats, thugs, insurrectionists, and stuff like this, check this out. A study came out saying that political extremists are impulsive thrill seekers but mentally slower. So they had the nerve to insult you after calling you like a domestic terrorist and a threat. That's crazy. You see, this is again a part of that dehumanization, right? A lot of the stuff that you see going on right now is a part of that, setting up a narrative. Oh, they're stupid. Oh, they're racist. Oh, they're this. We just need to get rid of these people. You see how they've got this designation of violent people, and they are creating a narrative to say that this is how these violent, stupid people operate. You see how we need to weed out these bad elements of society? It's like political eugenics. Let's get into this. This comes from the Drudge Report feed. They put up February 23rd. It says, from destructive protests throughout 2020 to the violent events in Washington on January 6th, it's clear political unrest in America is reaching a boiling point. Psychologists are now asking what turns the civil discord common in partisan politics into extremist behavior. Researchers from the University of Cambridge say certain personalities are more likely to lead to extremism regardless of their political leanings. Their study, profiling the extremist personality, finds these individuals to be, quote, impulsive and likely to seek out thrills and risks. They also tend to be very cautious but are mentally slower with poor memory skills. The findings could help identify people most prone to radicalization. Quote, there appear to be hidden similarities in the minds of those most willing to take these extreme measures to support their ideological doctrines. Lead author Dr. Lior Zimgrad explains in a university release, quote, understanding this could help us to support those individuals vulnerable to extremism and foster social understandings across ideological divides. Says researchers note that these character traits apply to those with far left or right social, political, or religious attitudes. These individuals are likely to support violence in the name of ideology. Overall, the study finds people who endorse, quote, extreme pro-group action, including ideologically motivated violence, there it is again, there's that phrase, ideologically motivated violence against others, have a surprisingly consistent psychological profile. Dr. Zimgrad's team showed a combination of cognitive and emotional attributes predict the endorsements of violence in support of a person's ideological beliefs. Researchers examined 334 men and women between the ages of 22 and 63 years old who completed a series of surveys. The questionnaires asked each person about their attitudes and the strength of feelings towards various political, nationalistic, and religious ideologies. Study authors say extremist views are fueled by a particular cocktail of these traits and unconscious cognition, the way the brain absorbs basic information. So they have begun to do a study on political extremists. I find that very interesting, and how they're always using the January 6th, but completely ignoring Antifa, completely ignoring Black Lives Matter by any means necessary, and any other groups out there. I find that very, very interesting, because this is what I'm saying. They're trying to eradicate an ideology. They're trying to say, hey, you are not allowed to believe X, Y, and Z. You can only believe what we tell you to believe today. Don't worry about what we told you tomorrow, like Dr. Anthony Fauci and the masks. Worry about what we're telling you to believe in today. You see, these political extremists, they're thrill seekers, right? We can get them to do stuff, but they're a little slow. So we have to figure out how to trick them into doing things so we can criminalize them. That's why they're saying that it was a psyop to steal, or a stop the steal. A lot of crazy things going on. That's why we started this whole episode talking about the secession theory, because some people don't want to play these games. They see how they're being set up, how they're being criminalized, and how they're being ostracized, and they're saying, you know what, I don't need this. Obviously, I want to take my country back, but if my country's this far gone, let them have it then. We'll start our own. The same, and the sad part is the same way that we've seen people start their own social media companies, these regions will start their own forms of governance, and you will have people infiltrate them only to disrupt things. So we have a very, very interesting future being laid out before us. But this again just shows you where we are at. You see, the demonization, the dehumanization, the targeting of certain political groups, right? Ideologically motivated extremism, crap like this, Trump derangement syndrome, Biden derangement syndrome, things like this. MFers is losing their mind, bro. People are losing their crap. And while they're losing their mind, you have the political elite, the folks in power, like literally frothing at the mouth at an opportunity to become petty tyrants, little mini dictators, and authoritarians. But here is an example of such hysteria right here. COVID has caused mass delusional psychosis. An article by Steve Richards over there at Sons of Liberty Media. They put this up February 28th. And think about this. Of course it would create a psychosis. You're literally inducing oxygen deprivation. There, of course, going to be physiological and psychological damage being done by people who are continually wearing masks. Yes. And then when I'm telling you that it's like a pick your own reality, obey Big Brother, don't worry about what we said yesterday, worry about today, social engineering psyop operation. Yes, a mass delusional psychosis. Let's read a little bit of this, and I'll go ahead and start closing out this segment and episode for you guys. It says, in recent interviews, Dr. Mark McDonald did an excellent job of explaining the problems that the people are having psychologically from the COVID lockdowns. Many people are going to say, quote, who cares? I am tired of COVID. Well, if you were tired of it, you better care because it will not end until you do something about it. Many people keep saying, quote, there's nothing I can do. Let somebody else do it. The problem with that thinking is that there is not enough of somebody else's to solve this problem. Once you have this many people psychologically damaged, it takes a large number of people to get everyone back to normal. Our young population has been horribly harmed by the doctors and the adults' population's failure to protect them from a huge number of people who let their fear control them instead of thinking things through and realizing they were being lied to. I realize people have heard enough about statistics. Even if COVID would have killed more people this year than normal, which it did not, it would have not justified destroying so many people's lives. If you destroyed them to save them, you did not save them. So back on April 30th of 2019, this author, Steve Richards, wrote an article about a book they read. This book, if you would have to read it, if you would have read it, would have prepared you for what you're going through right now. The problem with most people is that they just read history, but they do not apply history. I like that. That is also the problem most people have when they read the Bible. If the Bible or the history book said, if you stick your hand in a wood chipper, you will lose your hand, then we should then teach that history in schools and churches and then not see any more with their hand missing from shoving them in the wood chipper. The problem we are seeing today is that the churches and the schools are teaching the children that they should make the same mistakes of the past, if not worse mistakes. If you think you can be unharmed when so many people are suffering, you are mistaken. We need to step up and take responsibility for our children's future. In the first paragraph of my article, I wrote this. Most people have not heard of this book written by Charles Mackey. Even better than just hearing about the book, but they also apply what they learned from the book to what they see today. Why? Because it shows how a large number of people believed things that were not true and how believing untrue things harmed them. Reading this book teaches you that if you blindly go along with the crowd, you are choosing to be part of the problem instead of choosing to be part of the solution. I know in an age of media acting like polls prove something, we should believe in that people may not be able to accept that concept. However, this book proves it does not matter what the majority believes. It only matters what is true. You can either accept that or suffer the consequences of the failure to verify the truth. Goes on to say that does that apply even more now? The masks are a perfect example. On my box of Walgreens ear loops face mask, it plainly states that this mask is not a respirator. This product is intended for general use or general purpose infection control practice. When properly worn, it reduces potential contact by the wearer to blood and bodily fluids, but does not eliminate the risk of contracting any disease or infection. Change the mask immediately if splashed with blood or bodily fluid, like spit, dribble. That is the reality. If you looked at a mask under an electron microscope, the mask would look like a chain-link fence, and the virus would look like gnats flying through it. It does not matter what anyone says. That is the size difference. That it is the absolute reality. Obviously, the mask manufacturers are not going to continue the lie. Sometimes you can dual use things. The blacksmith may try to use his anvil as a boat anchor. That may even work. However, the anvil will not work as a parachute. Yes, an anvil will not work as a parachute, even if Anthony Fauci gets on TV and says it will. Yes, even if Anthony Fauci gets on TV and says that 2 anvils will work as a parachute, it will still not work. The problem with mass delusional psychosis is that reality does not matter. It is not supposed to look rational. That is why it's delusional. The problem is participating in it only makes it worse. If the delusional people see the sane people wearing masks, they think they are normal. They will strap that anvil on their back and jump out of that plane, while Anthony Fauci says it will be a light landing and we cannot go back to normal until everyone does it. I think that's a great way to explain it. If you just put this anvil on your face, you'll be able to breathe appropriately. You know what? Put 2 anvils on. You know what? What's that? Go ahead and put 16,000 anvils on your face, and then you can go to the supermarket. But this is the upside down world we have now lived in. When you literally think when people think that government is here to help them and that they have their best interest at heart, we have failed. And so what we have to do is what I said earlier in the week. We have to go out there into the world. We have to get uncomfortable. We have to try to reach people as easy as it takes, as hard and as long as it takes, right? Sometimes that means being armed with consent forms. Sometimes that means being armed with the vaccine inserts. Sometimes that means being armed with laws, articles, videos, and things like this. But it means trying to wake people up. And so in the area where I'm at, we don't wear masks. We don't do that. With Wakanda, we don't do that here. No. We don't wear masks. We don't wear masks in Walgreens. We don't wear masks at the gym. We don't do that at the bar. We don't do that at the restaurant. We don't do that here, bro. Because we all know the game here. And I'm not saying everybody's got each other's backs. That's not what this is. What this is creating a culture of awareness to fight this tyranny. This is why our governor is doing all the crap she's doing. But don't worry, she's being on notice. She's already been served a couple lawsuits. Things are in motion. But that's what I'm saying. People have to start caring more. Do not play this bullcrap. Do not get into character. Don't sit up over there and wear your cute little tiger mask, rawr, because you're still a pussy. Okay? And this is what happens. You can't play cute with this. This is not something you debate with. These people, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And that's why you guys have heard not only the sophistication, but the escalation and the intensity thereof to be on point, to be on cue, to see what is happening and to not play games. You can either be a part of the problem or a part of the solution. Because you want to talk about something, check this out. Here's another byproduct of the problem right here. Harvard study. An epidemic of loneliness is spreading across America. Yeah, dude. I'm sure it is. I told you guys just the other week, Japan nominated a minister of loneliness because you're locking people down in their houses. You're telling them, do not go outside. You were telling them, do not shake hands, do not socialize, you cannot go to the store. And you're wondering why loneliness and suicide and mental health epidemics are spiking? Because you have a fair amount of the population brainwashed, thinking that the TV is their friend and that government is here to help them. How foolish of them. And so rather than talking smack about these people, we have to wake them up. We have to show them that the media doesn't care about these people. The government doesn't care about you. I care about you because I can recognize that natural human spark of divinity within you, and I see you suffering. And you know who's going to help you outside of me? God. That's who you need. You don't need this goddamn TV, bro. You don't need Dr. Anthony Fauci. What you need is God, man. You need to pull away from this because all of this is a mass delusion. You don't feel, listen, you feel like you're getting better? You feel like after doing everything they're telling you to do, you feel like you're getting better? Why are you drinking so much? Why are you popping so many pills? Why are you trying to fight off the thoughts of suicide and loneliness? These people aren't here to help you. They're not your friends. I might not be your friend, but I care about you. I don't even know you. Person listening right now, you get what I'm trying to tell you. We have had to talk about suicide prevention hotlines on the show, not because of how intense the content is, but because we understand that people aren't well. Right? There's an article over here. We posted it on our Liberation Legion account that LSD has tripled. Americans are taking LSD at 3 times the rate during the pandemic. They're locking down and then they're tripping out. And then when they come back from their trip, not only are they depressed, not only are they out of whack, but they're also depressed because while it feels like you were gone for days, you were only gone for a couple hours, and the reality is still the same. That's what I'm saying. I need to figure out how to have like a. I need to like preach something, man, because like the mental health aspect of this really does speak to me, and I don't know why. I think probably because I'm so crazy. And I can feel people just like disassociating from reality at an exponential rate, man. We just talked about how COVID's creating a mass delusional psychosis, mental health epidemic, suicides up the roof, and now we're about to get into how loneliness is spreading across America. Listen, we have talked about at Coachella, right? How there was an outbreak of just like herpes because of kids having sex at raves and stuff. And now a couple of months after, 2 years after or so, people are lonely. They're depressed because we are natural. We're human creatures. We're social beings. We need to be involved with other people. It is so dystopian seeing band members locked inside of just like protection pods, singing songs. It is dystopian seeing children in schools that look like prisons, man. I told you, it's dystopian for me to see some people with masks on, hats on, shades on, and earplugs in, and I'm like, where the hell is this alien, dude? This person, like, this is dystopian. People, we need to be able to see folks who's smiling, man. We need to be able to reach out to our fellow person, but they have figured out how to isolate us from ourselves, isolate us from each other, and this is what it is causing. This is the byproduct of that mass delusional psychosis. So, of course, the TV that has been there for them is going to be their lifeline. Not real, not reality. It's not here. Let me get into this instead of ranting and raving. We put this up February 19th. It comes from Natural Blaze. It says loneliness among Americans has been growing in recent years, but the policy response to the COVID-19 pandemic has drastically exacerbated the problem. A new report by the Harvard University finds that 36% of Americans are experiencing, quote, serious loneliness, and some groups, such as young adults and mothers with small children, are especially isolated. Researchers at the Harvard Graduate School of Educators, quote, Making Caring Common, analyze data from October 2020 online survey of 950 Americans. Quote, alarming numbers of Americans are lonely, they conclude in their paper. And those surveyed, quote, reported substantial increases in loneliness since the outbreak of the pandemic. Young adults are the loneliest group. According to the research findings, 61% of young people aged 18 to 25 reported feeling lonely, quote, frequently, or, quote, almost all or all the time during the 4 weeks preceding to the fall survey. 43% of these young adults indicated that their loneliness had increased since the pandemic and related lockdowns began. These results echo similar findings of other Harvard researchers who found that nearly half of young adults were showing signs of depression amid the pandemic response. And in August, the CDC reported that 1 in 4 young adults in this age range had contemplated suicide during the month of June. That's sad. That's whenever I got a rescue puppy. Real talk, like I got a rescue puppy right like at that time frame. Yeah, little teapot. Yeah, I was working in my garden. Man. And that's what I'm saying, man. People don't go do healthy things like that. They don't work in their gardens. They don't go join the neighborhood watch. They don't go do stuff like that. They don't hang with their chickens. They don't get involved in a community garden. They don't go meet at a trader's market, man. They don't go socialize. They say, oh, well, the TV told me there's a pandemic going on, so I'm locked up. I've seen videos of mothers straight doing laps in their backyards while the son watches on the footsteps, watching their mom straight booking it around their backyard, doing laps. And I'm like, my God, this is creating that mental health epidemic. So yes, people contemplated suicide. Yes, depression is on the rise. Yes, all of this stuff is going through the roof. Overdoses and more. Getting back into this, it says mothers with small children were another group experiencing higher rates of loneliness according to the recent survey analysis, with more than half of the mothers reporting serious loneliness. Well, where's the husband? That's misleading in and of itself right there. Where is the husband? Mothers with small children, where's the family aspect? 47% of these mothers said that their loneliness increased during the pandemic response. Yeah, dude. But this is again the culture. While everyone has been forcibly cut off from normal social interactions as a result of government lockdowns, measures, social distancing mandates, and other public health orders, young people and mothers with small children may be particularly harmed by these policies. In many cases, older teenagers and young adults have been unable to meaningfully connect with their peers during school closures and remote learning plans. Yeah, the kids are the ones suffering the most. Additionally, social distancing requirements on many college campuses have halted normal social interactions and can contribute to loneliness and depression among this cohort. As a fall semester article in BU Today, a publication at Boston University, explained, BU's aggressive coronavirus safety protocols, no large groups, fewer in-person classes and meetings, and restrictions in the amount of people allowed in an elevator, laundry room, and even around a dining hall table can equal loneliness. Yeah, you're killing the human spirit. They are trying to kill the human spirit. That's what this is. This is the anti-human nature of COVID. This is the dehumanization agenda in play right now. And we are seeing it happen in live time. They are trying to tell you that you are non-essential, that you can stay at home, that you don't have a future, that the world is over. There's a virus loose, put your mask on. You don't matter. And this has all been done by design. And you have people believing the propaganda. And this is what I was talking about at the start of the show. The separation of the wheats and the tares, right? This schism, this fracturing of society, the Civil War and more, this Great Awakening process. Well, the Great Awakening versus the Great Delusion. And so we've got to figure out how to wake people up. We've got to figure out how to reach people in this state. Because while they might be hurting, this is also a phenomenal time to make new allies. People's minds, unfortunately, are fresh. They're emptied out of all that nonsense. And so they want to believe in something bigger than themselves. They want to believe in something that gives them hope again. And I'm telling you, it's not this dying system. It's not this dying system. It's not the delusion that they're feeding you. It's you. You've always been waiting for you. And also, God's been waiting for you to reach out to him because he wants to know you. He doesn't care about your gamer score. He doesn't care about your follower count. He doesn't care about any of that crap. What he cares about is you and whether or not you're straight and whether or not you want to be on point with him. People don't want that. They don't want to have that accountability. They want to disassociate. That's why as this epidemic of loneliness is going up, that's why they're saying, hey, let's legalize the DMT. Let's legalize the psilocybin. Let's give them the LSD, all right? Now that we've got this mental health epidemic coming, and I actually predicted this. I talked about this in past shows, how this was going to be the thing. I talked about it. Americans are dropping LSD at 3 times the rate because they have set it up for this mental health epidemic. You're going to see this being rolled out. You're going to see psychedelics, psilocybin, LSD, DMT, all that stuff being pushed out there as a way for people to help mitigate their feelings. I'm not saying that's good, and I'm also not saying that's bad. But you got this loneliness, you got this delusional psychosis, and then you got these psychedelics being introduced into the populace. You got this delusional thinking that's also being introduced that's really messing up the game for a lot of folks to where we can't even be honest with people. They don't want to hear that. You upset people being truthful. So this is a dangerous cocktail being foisted upon us. You see, that's what I'm saying. Evil is evolving. And I got to be honest. Now, I've really cut back on my drinking and on my smoking since this. Not only for the baby, but not only for the work, but because something's telling me that now is not the time to be under the influence. Now is the time to get clean. Now is the time to get focused. Now is the time to turn it on. You see what I'm saying? Don't turn it off. That's what they want you to do. That's why they're trying to kill the light and kill the energy of people. Don't do that. What you need to do is you need to fight back. You need to figure out who you are, discover that power from deep within you, and you need to figure out how to fight back at any means necessary. Don't let these people tell you who you are. Do not let them give you your identity. You have to reclaim that. As we've talked about throughout the entirety of the show, that's the plan. Get this person to not care about themselves and ultimately give up on humanity and God. Do not do that. Do not give these demons what they seek. We have to fight back because we are all we have. And there is not enough of somebody else's out there to change the tide. It starts at home. It starts with us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is domestic aggression, eco-outrage, and evil evolving. Don't let them people tell you who you are. Don't let them play them games on you. Because that's not what we do here. You understand? That's not what we do here. And that's not what we're gonna do. That's not what the future needs. What the future needs is the best of us. What the future needs is for us to get up off of our knees. Understand that the time we have is short, and that's why every single day counts. There is nothing new under the sun, and all we have is each other. This is it. We might have to start making credos of what we stand for, because these people are trying to tell us what to believe in, and I ain't having that. No sir. No ma'am. Nope. But rather than getting carried away with the shenanigans and the theatrics, I'd like to say thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning into this very special edition. You heard the good news. You're going to have to hear it when I come back from my break, because I got even more news for you. But like I said, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I really have for you guys and gals. If you have any more questions, feel free to email me. I'll have it in the description bar below. And as always, guys and gals, stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out.